The story begins with a man swinging his sword, declaring that he was once the hero who saved the world from the underworld lord, a tyrant who had covered half the world in blood. This man is Aiden Alberio, known as the Dragon Slayer King. However, when Aiden defeated the underworld lord, he was cursed. As he lay on the ground, wounded, he was surrounded by people who had betrayed him. Aiden angrily asked if they all knew that those who desire to destroy evil would themselves become evil. The man in front of him, who seemed to be part of the imperial family, explained that the underworld lord was a perpetual being. Those who kill him don't just die, they become the new underworld lord. He told Aiden that it would be a great honor for him, the Dragon Slayer King, to take on this cursed role and sacrifice himself for the country. Another man admitted they had no other options and didn't ask for Aiden's forgiveness. This enraged Aiden, who gritted his teeth in frustration. A woman holding a weapon then smiled and told Aiden he had worked hard and should now rest in peace. Aiden was shocked as he realized she was casting a powerful sealing spell called Claymore. As Aiden slowly disappeared, he thought about how he had considered these people to be his friends and allies, but it was all a lie. He cursed them, saying he would rather die than be trapped forever. They sealed him in an endless abyss, a place where time didn't exist. As he fell into eternal darkness, he vowed to kill them all with his own hands. Suddenly, Aiden spoke, and the two men standing nearby were shocked. One of them called him Master and asked if he was awake. Confused, Aiden wondered what was happening and where he was. Then, a couple appeared, and the woman cried out, asking if he was all right, calling him, "My precious boy." The man confirmed that Aiden was awake. When Aiden opened his eyes, he was shocked and confused. He asked the people around him who they were. A woman, startled, told him that he had been sleeping for 2 days and might still be disoriented. She hugged him tightly and said she was his mother, calling him Aiden Regressed. Aiden was even more confused because she didn't call him Aiden Alberio, his previous identity. From that moment on, Aiden Alberio was reincarnated as Aiden Regressed, the eldest son of a duke. Suddenly, Aiden felt a sharp pain in his head, and his mother asked if he was okay. Then, all of Aiden's memories came flooding back, leaving him confused about why he was remembering the life of Aiden Regressed. He looked at his hand and wondered if this was the 450th year of the imperial calendar, which would be 15 years before he died. He recalled being betrayed by his companions, forced into becoming the new underworld lord, and then left to die. Aiden swore that even if they begged for mercy, he would find them and kill them one by one. However, Aiden was shocked when he realized the previous owner of this body was a scumbag. He was confused about why he came back to life in a body like this and why Aiden Regressed had been passed out for 2 days, drunk and drenched by rain. Aiden thought that if he hadn't been the Duke's son, he might have been beaten to death. The next day, Aiden looked at himself in the mirror, feeling awkward. He questioned whether he was truly Aiden Alberio or if he had just dreamed the entire life of someone named Alberio. Suddenly, he decided to check his powers and opened a system menu. It showed that he was of the human race, but all his titles were marked as unavailable. These titles included King of the Mercenaries, Reaper of the Warlocks, and Nemesis of Talos. The system stated that these titles would gradually become available upon qualification. Aiden was stunned, especially when he realized he still possessed the power he had gained by consuming the heart of the Berserker, along with his title of Dragon Slayer. Aiden realized that his powers were still with him, so it wasn't just a dream. Although he was bothered by his name being different, he wasn't sure if it mattered. Then, he laughed, thinking that this must be a gift from the gods, and vowed to find and destroy those who betrayed him. Suddenly, a servant appeared and was shocked to see Aiden laughing to himself. The servant asked what was going on, but Aiden just smiled and said he was thirsty. The servant brought him something to drink, and Aiden grabbed it, thanking him. The servant was confused and scared, wondering why Aiden was being so polite, as it was unusual for him. Aiden continued to laugh, asking the servant if the drink was good and if he could get some water. The servant, trembling in fear, watched as Aiden drank the coffee, remarking that it tasted lovely. The servant was unsure if Aiden really liked it, or if he was serious about saying thank you. When Aiden asked if there was anything else, the servant quickly said no and left. Outside, the servant told another that their young master had just said thank you, which confused the other servant, who wondered if Aiden had gone mad. Back in his room, Aiden cursed, realizing that his simple words had caused the servant to overreact. He was confused about what had happened to the original Aiden Remes, now that he had regressed 15 years into the past. He wondered if the original Aiden still existed separately in this timeline. Aiden recalled that by this time, he should have gained his independence from his mentor, Valkan, the former mercenary king. Determined to find out more, Aiden left his room and called out to a servant named Philip. Both were shocked, as Aiden had never called him by name before. Aiden told Philip he had some questions for him, leaving Philip startled and trembling with fear. Aiden smiled and asked Philip if he was okay. Another servant patted Philip on the shoulder, thanking him and saying he would be remembered, leaving Philip speechless and confused about Aiden's strange behavior. Aiden then asked Philip about the mercenary king, which shocked him. Aiden wanted to know what Philip knew about the mercenary king, who was famous in Aiden's mind as his mentor. Philip told him that there were rumors the mercenary king had gone missing some time ago, but he had never heard anything about the mercenary king having a disciple. This left Aiden shocked and confused. If the mercenary king didn't have disciples, then what had the original him been doing, and where had he gone in Aiden's past life? In a slum, a man wearing a cloak noticed a child in front of him. As the man walked towards the child, who was the young Aiden Alberio in his past life, decided to test his luck. He bumped into the man and slyly stole something from him. As Aiden continued walking, he smirked, thinking how lucky he was to steal such a large money bag from someone important. However, the man suddenly appeared behind Aiden and smiled, saying, "You're quite gutsy, aren't you?" Aiden was shocked and speechless. This man was Valkan, the king of mercenaries. Valkan asked Aiden how he dared to steal from him, then grabbed Aiden's shoulder, making him tremble in fear. Aiden quickly apologized, but Valkan just smiled and commented on Aiden's sturdy body. He then declared that from that day onward, Aiden would be his disciple. Aiden was confused, but Valkan pulled him along, laughing and promising to train him to be the best mercenary. That's how Aiden met Master Valkan, and from then on, he made a name for himself as Valkan's disciple. Later, after slaying the Berserk Dragon, he earned the nickname the Dragon Slayer King. In the present time, Philip was shocked when Aiden asked him about the Mercenary King, stating that he'd never heard any rumors about the Mercenary King having a disciple. Aiden was startled and stunned, thinking there was no way the disciple of the Mercenary King, Aiden Alberio, didn't exist in this timeline. Meanwhile, in the hall, one servant asked his companion if he thought the young master had changed lately. The other servant agreed, mentioning that the last time Philip spilled wine, Aiden didn't throw anything at him. Instead, he even thanked him. Aiden had started calling people by their names in a friendly way, which surprised the servants. They thought people could change after a life-threatening experience, and it seemed to be true for Aiden. However, they were still concerned, noting that Aiden had recently looked spiritless, with empty eyes. Meanwhile, Aiden felt like he had nothing to do. The servants prepared his meals, and he didn't even have to do the dishes. He had tried searching for his other self, Aiden Alberio, but as expected, that version of him didn't exist in this timeline. Despite this, he was still haunted by thoughts of betrayal, hatred, and revenge. Aiden was startled to see two men having a sword fight for training. They were knights from the duchy. Suddenly, a man approached Aiden, asking why he was there. This was Carl Remes, Aiden Remes's younger brother. Unlike the former owner of Aiden's body, who was a scumbag, Carl was diligent and had already become a knight despite being the second son, even having a right to succession. However, Carl had no respect for his older brother. Carl was angry, asking why Aiden wasn't off drinking like usual. Aiden could see the disgust and sense of superiority on Carl's face as he looked down on his older brother for wasting his time playing and drinking. Aiden replied that he was just watching the trainees because he was bored. Carl snapped back, saying that night training wasn't a spectacle, and if Aiden wasn't there to spar, he should leave. Aiden was initially stunned and confused, but then realized he hadn't held a sword since the fiasco. He told Carl that he'd like to spar. Carl was shocked and asked him to repeat himself. Aiden confirmed that he wanted to spar. At the training grounds, a trainee knight named Bazan kneeled before Aiden and greeted him as the young master before their sparring match. Aiden looked at Bazan and simply said, "Good." Meanwhile, two knights watching from a distance were concerned. One asked if they should stop the sparring since Aiden was still the young master. The other knight replied that Bazan would probably lose on purpose to avoid getting fired. Bazan was nervous and uneasy about sparring with Aiden, whom he considered a scumbag. He couldn't believe he was being forced to fight someone so weak, someone who even lost to the neighborhood dogs. However, Aiden could tell that Bazan was thinking about how to lose on purpose. Aiden smiled and said it had been a while since he had warmed up, and he was curious about what would happen if he went all out. As they raised their wooden swords, Aiden told Bazan not to hold back and to do his best. He asked if Bazan agreed that a training knight who loses to a weak alcoholic is useless. Then, Aiden smirked and warned that if Bazan lost, he'd have him kicked out of the order. Bazan was shocked by this challenge. Carl, watching nearby, thought Aiden had lost his mind. In his view, Aiden had never even held a sword, and now he wanted to spar seriously with a trainee knight. Bazan, his eyes bright with determination after Aiden's words, stepped forward and attacked. Aiden managed to block the strike but gritted his teeth, realizing that this body was much weaker than he had thought. Despite the pain, he found himself wanting to exchange more blows. As the sparring continued, Bazan became increasingly frustrated. The knights watching were shocked to see Aiden holding his own. One of them was worried about Aiden getting hurt, while Bazan was confused, wondering how the young master was managing to keep up. Carl was shocked, and Bazan was confused as to why Aiden wasn't going down. Bazan was certain Aiden wouldn't stand a chance, but his sword just couldn't reach him. As their swords clashed, Aiden found it refreshing, feeling the hot blood coursing through his veins. Bazan was taken aback, while Aiden smirked, enjoying the exhilaration he hadn't felt in a long time. The other knights were stunned, with one commenting that there was no way Bazan was being pushed back and wondering if he was seeing things. Carl was angry, unable to believe that the scum Aiden was gaining the upper hand against a trainee knight, especially since Aiden used to get beaten up by street dogs. Bazan was shocked to see that Aiden's attacks had suddenly changed, as if he had been holding back the whole time. He couldn't understand how Aiden was performing such moves, but in Aiden's mind, he realized that after living lazily for so long, he had forgotten who he truly was. Despite his current weak and muscle-less body, he was still Aiden Alberio, the Dragon Slayer King, who had once killed the Berserk Dragon. Aiden swung his sword, forcing Bazan to retreat. Suddenly, Aiden pointed his sword at Bazan, who was shocked. Aiden smiled and asked if Bazan was going to surrender. The other knights were murmuring, wondering if Bazan really lost to their young master, which seemed unbelievable to them. Aiden laughed and thanked Carl, saying the sparring match was refreshing. Carl smirked and replied that he was glad to hear that. Aiden then waved his hand, saying he'd come by often to spar again, and told everyone to do their best before leaving. Carl was stunned and confused, wondering if Aiden was really the same person he knew. Another knight shared the same doubt. Later that night, Aiden looked at his hand and said he couldn't believe his body struggled with even one duel. He smirked and lay down in bed, sighing that at least he was able to let out his frustrations. He saw this as a new opportunity, a chance the heavens granted him for revenge. However, he knew his enemies were incredibly talented, practically one-man armies, and held high status. He mentioned the Night King, the heir to the Grand Duchy of Sias, Silbita, the iron-blooded saint chosen by the slaughter cult Spica, the great Archmage Shura, the second in command of the Immortalitarian Empire, and the great alchemist Calcis. Aiden realized he couldn't stand a chance against them at the moment and might need to fight them all alone. To achieve his revenge, he had to eliminate them before they could join forces. He knew that once they united, the country would struggle, and he had to accomplish this before the coalition to subjugate the dark magicians formed in 5 years. Aiden knew that to achieve his revenge, he needed to start by fixing his weak body. In its current state, he couldn't even defeat a single goblin, let alone his powerful enemies. He thought of a method to help him get stronger. The next morning, Philip came to see Aiden, who gave him a list of items to buy. Philip was shocked and asked if Aiden really wanted to purchase everything on the list. Aiden, puzzled, asked if there was a problem with his request. Philip checked the list and noted that Aiden wanted to buy a top-quality holy potion along with several expensive ingredients. He was even more shocked to see that the list included poisonous plants. Aiden remained silent, knowing that even if he explained why he needed these ingredients, people would likely doubt him. He then tapped Philip's shoulder, wondering if the previous owner of his body had ever done something similar. Smiling, Aiden asked Philip if he was okay with handling something dangerous and whispered that he would find it fun. He joked about revisiting the old days, which made Philip run off, saying he had no objections and would buy the items right away. Aiden, still smiling, thought to himself that he needed to take advantage of his new life. As the son of a wealthy duke, he had resources he never had before. He had once experienced a body that broke through mortal limits as a swordmaster, so he knew he could reach that level faster than anyone else. Though this method was far from normal, it was necessary. 1.5 months later, Aiden had prepared everything. Standing in front of his setup, he sighed and called Philip, asking for the mana potion. Philip quickly handed it to him, and Aiden drank it. He was using the break-then-heal method, where he pushed his body to its limits with intense training and then restored it with mana potions. A single potion cost as much as a month's living expenses for a commoner, but as the son of a rich duke, this method was possible for him. Aiden had a secret weapon for his training. He called for Philip and asked where the things he had ordered were. Philip told him that they were delivered to his room. Though Philip was curious about what Aiden planned to do with those ingredients, he remembered Aiden's recent warning about revisiting the old days and decided not to ask. Aiden went to his room and found the ingredients. He was glad to see that Philip had bought all the poisonous plants he requested, like the flower of despair and the hellflower. Aiden never imagined he'd use this method, but here he was. He remembered the two who betrayed him, Calcis and Shora, who had created the theory. While poison wreaks havoc on the body, it will use all its resources to survive, unlocking hidden potential. Aiden knew this could easily kill him, but he had a top-quality holy potion to help him recover, so he figured he'd be fine. As he prepared to eat the poisonous flower, Aiden remarked that he'd already overcome death once. After eating it, he drank the holy potion, but the pain was intense. He kneeled, panting, thinking about how much it hurt and that he would have to do this 100 more times. Still, he could feel his mana flow improving, as expected from the knowledge of those who betrayed him. Suddenly, a voice interrupted him, saying, "Is it fun, King of Dragon Slayers?" Aiden was shocked and angry, demanding to know where the voice was coming from and telling it to show itself. He recognized the voice and couldn't forget it, even if he wanted to. At that moment, Philip came into the room, nervous after hearing a loud noise. When he saw Aiden, he was shocked. Aiden, still furious, ordered Philip to leave immediately. Philip, understanding the seriousness, quickly left the room. Aiden was still fuming, sure that he had heard the voice and that it wasn't a hallucination. Suddenly, someone appeared in front of him. Aiden was confused and asked if it was the Underlord, and wondered why he was there. When Aiden turned around, the Underlord suddenly laughed and taunted him, saying, "I caught you, haven't I? It's been a while, King of Dragon Slayers, Aiden Alberio." Aiden was furious. The Underlord continued to tease him, and Aiden, shocked, shouted, "You scoundrel Underlord, why are you here? I saw your end with my own eyes." But the Underlord calmly replied that it looked like Aiden missed him, adding that he didn't have a physical body anymore, so Aiden couldn't look at him. Aiden sighed and asked how the Underlord was talking to him if he had lost his body. The Underlord reminded him that in the end, he had died while becoming the Underlord himself. Aiden clenched his fists, confused, and asked if the Underlord was implying that he was now the Underlord. The Underlord explained that it was half right and half wrong. At the moment of his death, he transferred his soul into Aiden's body. Originally, he had planned to take over Aiden's body and resurrect himself. Aiden laughed, realizing that the Underlord's plan had failed because of his suicide. Aiden then asked if the Underlord's soul still existed within him, and the Underlord confirmed it. Aiden, now more serious, asked how he could kill that soul. The Underlord was momentarily speechless. Aiden wondered if pouring holy power into his body would work, or if the only way to kill the soul was for them to die together. The Underlord quickly told Aiden to wait and listen. He said to Aiden, "He is different now how I was in the past." Aiden asked how, pointing out that he was still a being that loved madness and chaos. The Underlord explained that the madness and chaos Aiden witnessed were not originally part of him, but were due to a link with the demon god. That link was severed when the Underlord was trapped in the void, which is why he now seemed more composed compared to the insane lunatic Aiden remembered from back then. Aiden, confused, asked the Underlord about the demon god. The Underlord explained that the demon god, also known as the original sin, is a being of pure malice, feared even by the gods. In the past, the Underlord was cursed to carry out the demon god's will. Aiden then asked one last question. Was traveling back 15 years and possessing the body of Aiden Regressed part of the Underlord's plan? The Underlord admitted that it was. When he entered Aiden's body, he tried to use the dragon's mana that Aiden possessed to turn back time. Aiden was shocked and asked if that was even possible. The Underlord explained that dragons, as agents of the gods, could interfere with the laws of the world using their power. Turning back time wasn't impossible, but Aiden questioned why the Underlord didn't use that power to escape the void instead. The Underlord simply said he felt tired and needed rest, then suddenly disappeared. Another month passed, during which the Underlord occasionally talked to Aiden. Having him inside his body was unsettling, but also somewhat comforting, as it was nice to have someone who remembered his past. Aiden was startled when he saw his training scarecrow. He realized that his training method was effective, but the scarecrow wouldn't be enough anymore. He then noticed the knights practicing and laughed, saying they would be his new practice dolls. The Underlord commented that Aiden suited their side better than the heroes, which annoyed Aiden. He told the Underlord to shut up, holding a holy potion, and asked if he wanted him to gulp down the whole bottle. The Underlord chuckled and remarked that no one could fit the role of a hero better than Aiden. Aiden realized that training with poisonous herbs had helped him, but the holy power and potion were affecting the Underlord since he was a source of evil. Aiden warned the Underlord to be careful, then suddenly noticed a man who looked familiar but couldn't quite place him. A knight nearby called the man Lo and told him to pay attention. This shocked Aiden as he realized that this was Lo, the free knight, from his previous life. Lo, who had once been a mercenary pretending to be a knight, had earned the nickname Free Knight and had saved Aiden's life several times before dying in a battle against a dragon. Aiden sighed, thinking that seeing Lo again made him feel like he had truly returned to the past. He then called out to Lo, startling the other knights. The head knight asked what was going on, but Aiden approached Lo directly. Lo was startled and asked if Aiden was speaking to him. Aiden, now irritated, demanded to know why Lo hadn't addressed him properly by name and rank when spoken to. Instantly, Lo bowed and apologized, introducing himself as Apprentice Knight Lo and greeting Aiden formally. Aiden laughed, which made Lo angry and confused. Lo thought to himself, "Why is this ruffian picking on me?" but quickly denied thinking that out loud when Aiden accused him of it. Despite his fear, Lo was curious and confused about why Aiden was suddenly acting like this, especially since Lo was planning to quit soon anyway. Aiden found it thrilling to see Lo squirm, and for the first time, he felt glad to be in his new body. He tapped Lo on the shoulder and told him this was no good, instructing him to meet at the training ground that evening. Lo was shocked, but Aiden just smirked and left, deciding to give Lo a small gift as a way of repaying an old debt from their past life. When night came, Aiden was waiting for Lo at the training ground. Lo arrived, visibly distressed, and asked Aiden how he knew his secret, but more importantly, if he could really fix his arm. Lo, on the verge of tears, explained that if his right arm were functional, he could have lived as an ordinary knight. Aiden, recalling the debt he owed Lo from their previous life, decided to repay it by helping him. Aiden explained that Lo's arm was afflicted with mana severance syndrome, a condition that causes disabilities in the mana channels. Lo was shocked because he had never told anyone about it. He asked Aiden if it wasn't incurable, and Aiden confirmed that while people believe it's incurable, There was actually a cure that would be discovered in about 10 years. Aiden knew the cure and was willing to treat Lo's arm, but there was a catch. Aiden smiled and told Lo that nothing in this world is free. He presented a contract to Lo, which Lo immediately checked. The contract had two conditions. First, that Lo would spar with Aiden every day, and second, that Lo would swear to do anything Aiden commanded. Lo was angry and called the agreement almost like a slave contract. Aiden just smiled and asked if Lo didn't like it. Despite his frustration, Lo sighed and wondered how he could trust Aiden, especially since Aiden first claimed his condition was incurable. But with no other options, Lo decided to accept the deal. Aiden laughed, relishing the moment, thinking how exhilarating it was to make Lo his slave. As a bonus for treating Lo's arm, Aiden planned to take something valuable as well. Lo, watching Aiden laugh, felt uneasy, sensing danger. Suddenly, the Underlord chimed in, praising Aiden's actions as fitting for a dragon slayer king. Aiden quickly told him to shut up. A few days later, Aiden and Lo were traveling in a carriage toward the small town of Maryland. Lo questioned if this was really the right place, finding it strange. Aiden dismissed Lo's doubts, making him even more nervous. When the carriage stopped, the coachman announced their arrival, and they stepped out. Aiden told Lo to follow him, but Lo couldn't help but worry about whether his arm could truly be cured in such a place. They arrived at an unusual drugstore with a sign that warned it wasn't a clinic and didn't make drugs, telling druggists to get lost. Aiden touched the door, thinking back to Lo's past attempt to cure his condition here, where someone had been researching a cure for mana severance syndrome. As Aiden opened the door, he mentioned that things hadn't worked out back then. Lo, noticing a large painting, asked Aiden what he thought it depicted. Aiden explained to Lo that the painting depicted the Philosopher's Stone, a mythical object believed by mages and alchemists to interfere with the domain of gods, something that could even bring the dead back to life. Though it seemed absurd, Aiden, having transcended the divine realms of death and time, thought it might be possible. Suddenly, a voice spoke, surprised at Aiden's knowledge, and remarked that he was well informed. Aiden casually replied that he'd heard things here and there, thinking back to Calcis and Shora, who would occasionally talk about such topics. The woman, revealing herself, said it had been a while since they had an interesting guest, but pointed out that they didn't do business, as the sign indicated. Aiden then told Lo to step outside for a moment, which he did immediately. Once Lo was gone, Aiden called the woman by her name, Cassie, and got straight to the point. Cassie was surprised that Aiden knew her name. Aiden explained that his knight was suffering from mana severance syndrome, and he knew she was interested in this disease. Cassie was shocked, removing her hood and asking how much Aiden knew. Aiden, stepping closer, pointed out that just like her, his knight was afflicted with mana severance syndrome. Cassie was taken aback, demanding to know how Aiden knew about her condition. Aiden explained that her symptoms were more severe than usual, and without those herb leaves, her condition would keep worsening. He added that while Lo's condition affected only his arm, Cassie's disease had spread to all her organs, making her critically ill. Cassie remarked that Aiden seemed well informed but pointed out a mistake. While she was researching a cure, she hadn't yet found a method for mana severance syndrome, meaning she couldn't cure Lo's arm. Aiden proposed a deal. If she cured Lo's arm, he would protect her and support her research within their territory. Cassie was about to respond when Aiden handed her a document, asking her to read it. Cassie was shocked upon reading it. Aiden revealed that it contained the cure for mana severance syndrome, something he had memorized from Calcis's discussions. Although the information was incomplete, he needed someone who could understand it. He asked if it was still impossible to cure Lo's arm. Cassie asked for half a month to consider the method. Aiden smirked, noting that obtaining the medicinal ingredients listed would be difficult with her current resources. Cassie, realizing he wanted something in return, asked what it was. Aiden pointed to her ring and asked for it. Cassie, surprised, told him he was being naughty. Aiden insisted, revealing that he knew the true purpose of the ring. Cassie's ring, the Ring of Swiftness, was a valuable artifact that tripled physical speed for 10 seconds, 3 times a day. It was crucial for her, given her physical limitations. Aiden explained that the ring was also important to him because it had helped Lo become an S rank even with one arm. For Cassie, It was her primary means of defense. Aiden told Cassie that if she came to the Duke's house, she wouldn't need the ring anymore because he promised to protect her. He asked what she thought of this offer. Cassie, willing to continue her research, agreed as long as she could keep working. She raised a concern about rumors spreading that a female beastkin was being hosted at the Duke's house. Aiden, unfazed, responded that he was Aiden Regressed, a notorious scoundrel, and that he didn't care about public opinion. Cassie was taken aback by his confidence and smirked, finding him interesting. She handed over the Ring of Swiftness, requesting that he take care of her accommodations and food. Aiden assured her that the Duke's house would be a better place than her current situation, but she would need to earn her keep. Back at Duke Regressed's mansion, what initially felt awkward now seemed like home to Aiden. Suddenly, Philip rushed in, looking for him. Aiden inquired about the urgency, and Philip informed him that it was an emergency. Aiden was shocked when Philip told him that young Master Carl had gone missing in Monster Mountain. 2 days ago, a report came in about someone disappearing there, so Carl formed a team to investigate but hasn't returned. Aiden was puzzled since Monster Mountain usually only has insignificant monsters. He asked Philip about the search team, and Philip said they were about to depart. Aiden was furious, thinking that if Carl disappeared, he'd have to take on the heir position of the duchy, ruining his plans for revenge. He decided to join the search team and instructed Philip to show Cassie to her room. Philip was shocked, but Aiden told Cassie he had a favor to ask. Aiden then met with his father, who was surprised when Aiden said he wanted to join the search team. His father refused, explaining that Carl and dozens of knights had gone missing, making this more than a simple case, and he couldn't send Aiden into such danger. Suddenly, Aiden cried, insisting Carl was his brother, though in his mind, he feared his plans being ruined. The Underlord called him disgusting, and Aiden angrily told him to shut up. Moved by Aiden's tears, his father hugged him and said he couldn't believe Aiden cared so much for Carl. He reluctantly allowed Aiden to go but warned him to be careful. Aiden secretly laughed, but his father then called Spiel, entrusting him to protect Aiden, as he was the only one he could rely on. Spiel agreed, but Aiden considered it a burden. Meanwhile, at Monster Mountain, Spiel, the vice-captain of the Regressed Knight Order, was leading the search. Walking through the forest, he noted that, as he suspected, they had been attacked since their tracks disappeared at a certain point. Aiden suddenly picked up a sword, noting that it was a weapon used by goblins. He pointed out that something strange was happening. Carl and the knights being overpowered by mere goblins didn't make sense. The only explanation, he said, was the Goblin King, a hobgoblin with intelligence and strength far beyond regular goblins. Aiden told Sir Spiel that hobgoblins were likely involved. Spiel, shocked, said that hobgoblins would be a tough match even for him, suggesting they prepare and come back later. But Aiden insisted there was no time to waste. If they delayed, everyone would be eaten. He ordered Spiel to bring a search dog. Spiel explained that they had already used search dogs, but the scent had been erased. Aiden cut him off, demanding a dog immediately. A dog was quickly brought, and Aiden smiled, calling it a good boy. Aiden then opened a bottle and poured its contents into the dog's mouth. Spiel was shocked and confused by what Aiden was doing. Aiden explained that it was a scent enhancement potion, something he had asked Cassie to get before they left, useful for search missions in his previous life. The search dog began to lead the way, and Aiden told the knights to follow. As night fell, they arrived at the goblin village. Spiel suddenly pointed out Carl and the other knights. They were still alive. Aiden sighed in relief, noting they weren't too late, but Spiel warned that something seemed off, and Aiden agreed. Suddenly, 3 hobgoblins appeared, confusing Aiden. How could there be 3 leaders in one village? Spiel quickly realized the situation was more serious than they had thought and warned everyone to be prepared to give it their all. He explained that hobgoblins were formidable opponents, even for skilled knights. Spiel then instructed Aiden to focus on rescuing the hostages and escaping with them, and Aiden agreed, thinking the knights could handle the hobgoblins without him. As the knights prepared to attack, Spiel charged at the goblins, furious that they had captured Carl. The hostages, seeing Aiden, were shocked and one exclaimed that they were saved. Aiden quickly broke the lock with his dagger and asked if everyone was okay. Carl, startled to see him, watched as Aiden untied their ropes and instructed the villagers to flee, saying the knights would cover them. In his mind, Aiden knew it was time for him to sneak away. Suddenly, Carl tapped Aiden, warning him to be careful of a monster. Aiden asked if it was a monster or a hobgoblin, but Carl urgently shouted, "Behind you, Aiden!" Just then a troll launched an attack, causing an explosion. Aiden narrowly dodged it, realizing he had overlooked something. The reason there were 3 hobgoblins was because there was an even higher-ranking creature, one of the most dangerous human-shaped demons, a troll. Aiden quickly told Carl to take the villagers and run, but Carl, concerned, warned him that it was a troll and that he might die. Aiden simply smiled and reassured Carl that he knew it was a troll, but he wouldn't die. After all, he was the older brother. Carl muttered under his breath, calling Aiden a scoundrel, but Aiden didn't care. He gripped his sword and charged at the troll. The troll slammed its fist into the ground, but Aiden managed to dodge and slashed its leg, causing the beast to kneel in pain. However, Aiden noticed that the troll's wound began to heal almost instantly. Panting, Aiden realized that the troll's regenerative power was incredible, making it impossible to defeat with ordinary strength. Despite this, Aiden smirked, readying himself as the enraged troll prepared to attack again. Suddenly, Aiden jumped forward, and the monster clenched its fist. Spiel shouted at Aiden to let him handle it, and swung his sword. Spiel thought to himself that hobgoblins were already tough, but a troll too? He hoped Aiden could hold on a bit longer. The troll attacked Aiden, but he dodged it. Aiden smirked, saying Cassie had given him something for situations like this. He activated the Ring of Swiftness, which had a 10-second time limit. Aiden knew he hadn't reached a high level of power yet, but with this ring, it was possible. With 8 seconds left, Aiden slashed the troll's hand, enraging the monster. Aiden then attacked the troll all over its body, making it shout in fury. Preparing his sword, Aiden set it aflame and slashed the troll's head, cutting it off. "This is the stage of sword aura," he declared. Spiel said their side was done and ordered the knights to help Aiden. As he watched Aiden, he noticed the blue energy on Aiden's sword and was confused. "No way," he thought. "That's the stage of sword aura, which I haven't even mastered yet. How does Aiden already have it?" The energy faded quickly, and Aiden was thrown against a tree, landing near a bird's nest. Aiden groaned, feeling pain all over his body. He thought, "I barely used sword aura for 10 seconds, and now I can't move." He realized he needed to use the Ring of Swiftness more carefully, but it had been effective. The next day at the Duke's house, Aiden's father remarked, "I see, so many were injured." He instructed Spiel to ensure that the families of the victims and those injured received maximum compensation within his power. Spiel confirmed what the Duke had heard, but the Duke asked him if it was true that Aiden defeated the troll. Spiel replied that yes, he and the knights witnessed it. The Duke remarked that Aiden not only used sword aura, but also defeated a troll, which confused him because this didn't seem like the son he knew. That night, Aiden was meditating, surrounded by flames. He realized that using sword aura had briefly increased his mana capacity. Clenching his fist, he acknowledged that he was still weak and needed to become much stronger to defeat his enemies. Suddenly, a small dragon appeared and complimented Aiden's determination. Aiden was shocked and asked where the dragon came from, recognizing the voice. The dragon laughed and revealed that he was the Underworld Lord, the Underlord. Aiden got angry, but the Underlord told him not to laugh. However, Aiden laughed loudly, mocking the Underlord's appearance. The Underlord blamed Aiden for being weak, but Aiden kept laughing and asked how the Underlord could appear. The Underlord explained that only Aiden could see him because they were one, and as Aiden grew stronger, the Underlord could manifest more. Aiden asked if he would have to keep seeing him from now on, saying he didn't like it. The Underlord replied that it was rude to talk that way to his savior. Aiden was confused and asked, "Wait, didn't you say the Underlord title was a curse from the demon god, and that curse was lifted when the link with the demon god was broken? What's your real name?" The Underlord said he lost his name long ago and now just exists. The Underlord was surprised when Aiden declared that his new name would be Curse. Confused, the Underlord asked why, and Aiden explained that since the Underlord was a curse placed on him, he would call himself Curse from now on. The Underlord thought it sounded silly and told Aiden so, but Aiden told him to shut up. The Underlord sighed, smirked, and said Aiden could call him whatever he wanted, knowing Aiden was doing it just to be difficult. A week later, Aiden went to Cassie's room, knocked, and entered, asking if the treatment was going well. Cassie was startled and teased, saying, "Oh my, the Troll Master has come to visit." Aiden gritted his teeth, thinking to himself that they called him Troll Master because he killed a troll, but it sounded like they were saying he looked like one. He preferred to be called Troll Slayer. He then asked Cassie where Lo was, and she told him the knight was inside. Aiden went to check on Lo and was surprised to see him crying. Lo said his arm was moving and back to normal, then suddenly punched the floor. Aiden was startled, but Lo thanked him, saying, "Thank you, young master, for recognizing and treating my condition. Even though I am just a lowly being, I swear to dedicate my life to you." Aiden laughed and accepted his pledge, thinking to himself that he would work Lo like a slave. Aiden asked Cassie about her own treatment. Cassie smiled and said her mana severance syndrome was a bit unusual and needed more research, maybe another month. Aiden praised her for doing a good job. Cassie smiled and said it was all thanks to the method Aiden had told her about, calling him Troll Master again. Aiden was annoyed and shouted at Lo, "If you're completely healed, then come out quickly. We have work to do." Lo smiled and said, "Yes, understood, sir. Give me any task." However, after Lo was healed, he was annoyed when Aiden's first task for him was physical labor. He shouted in frustration, "Somebody save me!" While Lo was panting, a man approached and greeted the young master. He was shocked to see a troll in front of him and asked Aiden if this was the troll he caught. He mentioned that trolls are rare and should fetch a good price. Aiden said he wanted to use the proceeds from selling the troll to buy certain herbs and asked the man if that was possible. The man smiled and assured him that their merchant group had everything, but then nervously mentioned that those were actually poisonous plants. Aiden smiled and calmly said, "If I say they're herbs, then they're herbs. So it's possible, right?" The man laughed nervously, still trembling, and agreed, thinking that if he upset this dangerous man, who knew what might happen. After the man left, Aiden smirked, thinking to himself that easy money was always nice. The Underlord then commented that Aiden's old mercenary habits hadn't changed, but Aiden told him to shut up. Suddenly, Philip rushed in, looking shocked, and called for the young master. Aiden asked what was wrong, and Philip told him the Duke was asking for him. Surprised, Aiden went to his father's room. He heard laughter inside and knocked on the door. Upon entering, Aiden asked if his father had called for him. His father acknowledged his presence, and another man smirked, saying, "Oh, so you're Aiden." Aiden was startled and speechless, wondering what that man was doing there. The man commented that judging by Aiden's appearance, the rumors about him slaying a troll must be true, and it was a pleasure to meet him. Aiden recognized the man, but had no pleasant memories of him. The Underlord asked Aiden if he knew the man, and Aiden replied that he did, but only a little. He knew him as an old man who looked down on mercenaries. Aiden then introduced himself formally, saying, "Nice to meet you. I am Aiden Regressed." Aiden greeted the man, saying, "Greetings to the protector of the northeastern border, Margrave Turid Cetus." Margrave Cetus was surprised and asked if Aiden knew him. Aiden replied that, of course, he did, noting that Margrave Cetus was one of the few in the Empire who had reached the stage of Sword Master. Margrave Cetus smiled at this. Being a Sword Master is a transcendental stage that all knights dream of, surpassing mere talent to become superhuman, capable of cleaving mountains with a sword and making the air tremble with their breath. Aiden had reached this stage in the past and knew he needed to reach it again. Margrave Cetus laughed and said Aiden was polite, contrary to the rumors. He complimented the Duke on raising a fine son, but the Duke responded that Aiden still had much to learn. The Duke then asked if it was all right for Margrave Cetus to leave his territory, mentioning that he had heard it was recently attacked by orcs. Margrave Cetus glanced at him and said it wasn't just his territory, Suspicious activities had also been detected at the Slaughter Tower in the Wasteland of Death, which was managed by the Slaughter cult. Hearing this, Aiden was furious, gritting his teeth. He thought to himself that he had some business with the Slaughter cult and that the traitor Iron-Blooded Saintess would have to wait a bit longer. Margrave Cetus turned to the Duke and mentioned that unusual monster movements were happening in 3 different places simultaneously. He asked if the Duke thought it was a coincidence. The Duke admitted that now that it was mentioned, it did seem odd. He then asked Margrave Cetus for help since they were planning to form an investigation team. Margrave Cetus smiled and agreed, saying, "Of course, brother." Then Margrave Cetus added, "But I need one more thing." He suddenly grabbed Aiden's shoulder and asked if he would join his Night Order. Aiden was taken aback, as this offer seemed to come out of nowhere. Margrave Cetus explained that he had heard a lot about Aiden, how he had reached the stage of Sword Aura in less than half a year of wielding a sword. Margrave Cetus thought that the rumors about Aiden reaching the stage of Sword Aura in less than 6 months were nonsense, but seeing him in person made him reconsider. Margrave smirked and promised that he would make Aiden the greatest swordsman on the Western continent, vowing on his own name. The Duke started to say something about Aiden, but Margrave reassured him not to worry, saying he'd take good care of Aiden. Then, Margrave asked Aiden what he thought, since the decision was ultimately his. Aiden was speechless for a moment, but then smirked and declined the offer. Margrave was surprised and asked if Aiden understood the significance of joining the Cetus Knight Order. Aiden nodded, acknowledging it was one of the most renowned knightly orders in the Empire, but he was confident he could become a sword master on his own. In his mind, Aiden knew he had already reached that stage in the past, so achieving it again was just a matter of time. He boldly told Margrave that even now, he could at least scratch him in a fight. Margrave was shocked, and the Duke trembled with fear. But Margrave laughed, calling Aiden's remark unbelievably rude. The room seemed to shake as Margrave's presence grew powerful, demonstrating his ability to make even the air tremble with his murderous aura, a mark of a true swordmaster. Despite this, Aiden stood his ground, impressing Margrave. Margrave then asked if Aiden was sure he could back up his words. Aiden smiled confidently and suggested they make a bet. Margrave was taken aback and confused. Aiden mentioned that he knew Margrave had a weakness for bets. He proposed that if he couldn't scratch Margrave, he would join the Cetus Knight Order. But if Aiden won, Margrave had to give him his sword. Hearing this, Margrave was startled but then laughed, finding Aiden's audacity amusing. He noted that Aiden was completely different from the Duke. The Duke, unable to withstand the pressure of Margrave's aura, fainted. Margrave accepted the bet, and the Underlord whispered to Aiden that he had been aiming for that sword from the start. Aiden confirmed this, thinking to himself that he had to seize the opportunity to take a sword like that whenever it arose. Aiden identified the sword as Beelzebub, one of the legendary swords. The Underlord commented, laughing, that Aiden definitely belonged on their side rather than the hero's side. Meanwhile, outside the mansion, at the training ground, Aiden and Margrave Cetus were preparing to duel. Aiden asked Margrave if he was planning to use an ogre-slaying sword against a goblin. Margrave replied that he didn't know whether Aiden was a goblin or an ogre, but a knight's duty is to give their best regardless of the opponent. Aiden was speechless, thinking to himself that the knight's courtesy never changes, past or present. The conditions for the match were simple: no use of the aura blade, and Margrave Cetus would not move his right foot. Aiden thought these conditions might seem unfair, but to a sword master, they were hardly a handicap. He knew that if he charged in thoughtlessly, he'd be knocked out immediately. Margrave pointed out that they had quite an audience and suggested they start. Aiden raised his sword and agreed. Aiden suddenly leaped forward, catching Margrave off guard for a moment. He aimed his sword at Margrave's neck, but Margrave easily blocked it. Margrave noted Aiden's real combat experience, as he had gone for the neck right from the start. Aiden landed and swung his sword again, telling Margrave he knew he would block the initial strike. In his mind, Aiden expected Margrave to block every attack, and he did. Margrave grew puzzled and remarked that Aiden's swordsmanship was unrefined, like that of ragtag mercenaries, and said they'd have to fix it if Aiden joined their night order. Annoyed, Aiden charged at Margrave, thinking to himself, let's see how he handles this ragtag swordsmanship. Fueled by anger, he rushed toward Margrave, ready to strike. Margrave Cetus smiled, confident he wouldn't lose to a simpleton. However, he was shocked to see Aiden's sword suddenly moving in a different direction, narrowly avoiding a strike. The onlookers were stunned. One man on the right asked if Lord Aiden was actually pushing forward, and another agreed, saying the rumors about Aiden defeating a troll must be true. The Duke watched in disbelief, thinking that even though Margrave had imposed a penalty on himself, he was still a sword master. He wondered if it was reasonable that his son could hold his own against him. Margrave grew enraged as Aiden continued his attacks, which Margrave managed to block. He was baffled by Aiden's chaotic yet precise swordsmanship, which targeted vital points. Gritting his teeth, Margrave thought to himself that he must recruit this talented young man. Aiden was shocked when Margrave swung his sword, nearly hitting him. Aiden managed to dodge, confused as to why Margrave's simple sword swings felt so dangerous. The Underlord warned him that if he had tried to block that attack, he would have been cut in half. Aiden struck again, and Margrave commented on Aiden's interesting sword technique, adding that Aiden wouldn't be able to defeat him with just that. Aiden replied that he was still standing and could continue. Margrave laughed, saying Aiden never disappointed him, and that he had sharp eyes. Smiling, Margrave welcomed Aiden in advance to his knight's order. Aiden smirked back, thanking him in advance as well. Both prepared for another round, raising their swords. Suddenly, Aiden moved at an incredible speed, catching Margrave off guard. Margrave was shocked, realizing Aiden had been hiding his true abilities and had successfully deceived him. Aiden moved past Margrave Cetus, leaving a scratch on his shoulder. Smirking, Aiden remarked that he'd used Margrave's weapon, Beelzebub, effectively. The spectators were confused, wondering if the match was over, but then they erupted in cheers. The Duke stood in shock. Aiden, stunned himself, realized he'd won. Someone in the crowd called out, "Troll Master," in celebration, while another man shouted that he always believed in him. The Underlord asked Aiden if he wasn't bothered about using the ring to win. Aiden looked puzzled. The Underlord suggested that Aiden seemed more suited to the underworld than being a hero or dragon slayer. Aiden teased back, threatening to use the holy potion on him again. The Underlord conceded, calling Aiden a hero who cheats. Aiden shrugged off the comment. Margrave Cetus praised Aiden, acknowledging his skill in hiding his abilities and luring his opponent into complacency. Aiden dismissed it as luck, but the Underlord remarked that Aiden was still cheeky, even when pretending to be humble. Aiden admitted he thought he might lose an arm, but was relieved it was just a scratch. Margrave handed him the Beelzebub sword, saying it was his now. Aiden accepted it gratefully, promising to take good care of it, thinking to himself that this was a jackpot. The Underlord teased Aiden about his crude expression, but Aiden just called him a noisy, cursed one. Back in his room at the Duke's house, Aiden admired the Beelzebub sword, acknowledging its legendary status. The Underlord congratulated him, calling him a dragon slayer. Aiden, remembering the earlier accusation of cheating, asked the Underlord what happened to that accusation. The Underlord laughed, admitting he knew secrets about legendary swords that humans didn't. Aiden asked the Underlord if the secret of the sword was just another curse. As Aiden looked at the sword, the Underlord laughed, saying he wouldn't reveal anything for free. He proposed a deal. If Aiden swore to serve him as king and never make him drink holy potion again, he'd share the secret. Suddenly, blood appeared on the sword as Aiden gripped it tightly, and a system notification popped up, announcing a blood pact. Aiden glanced at the Underlord, who looked puzzled. Smirking, Aiden asked if the Underlord's subordinates didn't wield dark swords, and if he thought Aiden wouldn't know about it. He explained that Beelzebub was one of the legendary 72 swords, seemingly ordinary blades that were actually crafted from the bodies of corrupt lords who once ruled the ancient underworld. These cursed swords harbored the power of different corrupt lords. Aiden continued, explaining that one of the 3 conditions to awaken their hidden power was to feed them blood and form a blood contract. The Underlord expressed frustration, lamenting that he could have gained the upper hand for once. Aiden, with a crazed smile, declared he wouldn't serve the Underlord as a king since he was already dead, and he threatened to make him drink a holy potion every day. The Underlord quickly apologized. The next day, the Duke was writing in his study when Aiden told him he planned to join Margrave Turid's search party. The Duke was concerned, warning Aiden that the search was far more dangerous than the Demon Mountain, and granting permission would be difficult. Aiden insisted on going, with Margrave Turid reassuring the Duke that he'd ensure Aiden's safety. The Duke sighed, reminding Aiden that this wasn't a casual outing. Aiden agreed, but pointed out that since the investigation was for the safety of their territory, he wanted to be involved. Margrave suddenly grabbed Aiden's shoulder and urged the Duke to allow him to join, asking if it wasn't courageous for a son to step up for his father. The Duke was left speechless and startled by the request. Aiden just smiled, thinking to himself how different he was now compared to his previous life. Before, he had been useless, but now he was proving his worth. The Underlord chimed in, suggesting that Aiden was doing this for the Duke's sake, but Aiden dismissed the idea. He knew the real reason was for Beelzebub's awakening. Aiden revealed that the second condition to awaken the sword was to absorb an enormous amount of life force, which could be done by defeating monsters. Showing his eagerness, Aiden playfully stuck out his tongue, thinking of the thrill of facing monsters. The Underlord remarked that this was the first time he felt sorry for the monsters. Meanwhile, in the Pyron Mountains, something strange was happening in the forest. Wolves and other monsters were running in a frenzy, and amidst the chaos, an ogre was laughing ominously. Upon arriving at the fortress, Aiden was shocked by its state. He thought to himself, "This is the fortress of Attila, built to ward off the demonic beasts of the Pyron Mountains? The facilities and soldiers are all a mess. At this rate, they'd struggle with even a single goblin horde. How are they keeping out the monsters?" A soldier approached and greeted them, introducing himself as Dasvalt Timon, the chief officer of Attila Fortress. He welcomed their distinguished guests, Swordmaster Margrave Turid and the Troll Master, Aiden Remes. Aiden could hear two guards gossiping nearby. One of them asked if Aiden was the notorious ruffian young master, to which his companion replied, "No, not a ruffian scoundrel. He's the Troll Master," before laughing. The first man said he heard that Aiden had slain a troll, hence the nickname. His companion dismissed it, saying Aiden probably got the name because he looked like a troll. Lo, hearing this, grew angry and was about to draw his sword, but Aiden stopped him. The Underlord remarked on how unusual it was for Aiden to stay calm after hearing such insults. Aiden replied that fighting wouldn't do any good, and he had heard the name so many times that it no longer angered him. Margrave, catching on to the tension, commented, "Is it because the air here is so fresh that there are lots of bugs? The bugs are making a lot of noise." He then turned to Dasvalt Timon and asked if he agreed, a subtle hint at the gossiping soldiers. Timon laughed and said that the air was indeed fresh. Aiden smirked, thinking to himself, this man knows how to be an ass. As they walked through the fortress, Dasvalt Timon mentioned that there had been reports of monster attacks in various territories. Aiden, startled, asked if anything had happened at Attila Fortress. Dasvalt reassured him, saying there was no need for the fortress to worry. This response made Aiden mad, trying to stay calm. Margrave, noticing the frustration in Aiden's eyes, asked Dasvalt directly, "With monsters living right in front of the fortress, you're saying there's no danger?" Dasvalt nodded and explained, "Yes, it's because the orcs have settled in the middle of the mountain range. Maybe it's because of the orcs that the other monsters don't come down to the territory." Aiden was confused. Monsters keeping other monsters at bay, he thought. Suddenly, Aiden was startled when the Underlord spoke up in his mind, saying, "Something massive is coming." Aiden immediately looked around, trying to spot any threats. "I don't see anything," Aiden replied, confused. But then his senses sharpened, and he realized something was wrong. His eyes widened as he turned to Dasvalt and said urgently, "Monsters are approaching. We need to close the gates now." Dasvalt laughed, thinking Aiden was joking. "Your jokes have gone too far, young master. Monsters out of nowhere, he said dismissively. However, Margrave Turid, who had remained silent until now, suddenly commanded, "Close the gates." His authoritative voice left no room for argument. Dasvalt's eyes widened in shock. Even the Margrave was telling him to close the gates? Just then, the ground shook violently. Dasvalt felt the tremor beneath his feet and realized something was terribly wrong. Margrave Turid, sensing the urgency, said gravely, "It's a monster wave." Panic ensued. A horde of monsters was heading toward the fortress. The guards, 3 of them standing nearby, were terrified. The man in the center shouted to Dasvalt, "What should we do?" But Dasvalt, trembling in fear, couldn't muster a response. He was paralyzed, unable to command his soldiers. Margrave Turid snapped at them. "What are you waiting for? Close the gates now." His command jolted the soldiers into action. They hurriedly moved to close the gates, sweat pouring down their faces as they struggled to get the massive wooden doors shut. But they were too late. A beast, larger than anything they had ever seen, managed to slip through the gates before they could close them completely. The creature lunged at a nearby soldier, who stood frozen in fear, his eyes wide and his body trembling. Just as the beast was about to strike, Aiden leaped into action. With a swift, powerful slash, he cut down the giant beast, killing it instantly. Aiden stood over the dead creature, panting. He thought to himself, it's not enough to make a difference, but still, it's pretty good at draining life energy. One of the soldiers, watching in awe, muttered, "Did that ruffian just use sword aura? Maybe the rumors about the Troll Master are true." The Underlord, sensing Aiden's irritation, began teasing him. "Troll Master, is it? Quite the reputation you've got there," he mocked. Aiden scowled and snapped back, "Shut up." The Underlord laughed, unfazed. "You're always especially harsh on me, aren't you?" he said, still chuckling. Aiden retorted, "Whatever you say always feels disgusting." The soldier whom Aiden had saved regained his composure and, with a shaky voice, bowed his head. "Thank you for saving me, young master," he said, his voice filled with genuine gratitude. Aiden was startled for a moment, but quickly composed himself. He glanced at the soldier who had thanked him and said, "Instead of thanking me, grab a weapon and defend the wall." The soldier, still shaken, nodded and hurried off to join the others. Suddenly, Lo appeared by Aiden's side. "Are you all right?" Lo asked, concern etched on his face. Aiden was silent for a moment, then motioned toward the gate. "Look at this," he said. Lo's eyes widened in shock as he saw the massive horde of monsters pressing against the gate. "That's a massive number of monsters," Lo whispered. All of a sudden, Aiden began to laugh, a dark, sinister aura swirling around him. "From now on, these guys will be my daily snacks," he declared, his eyes gleaming with a twisted delight. Lo was taken aback, confused and alarmed by Aiden's sudden change in demeanor. Aiden looked down at the Beelzebub sword in his hand, his gaze intense. He spoke to the sword, almost as if it were a living being. "Do you want to devour them?" he asked. But almost immediately, Aiden felt a wave of irritation. "What am I even saying?" he thought to himself. The Underlord, ever present in Aiden's mind, burst into laughter. "I guess even the Dragon Slayer King can't resist," he taunted. "Beelzebub is the sword of gluttony. It draws out the gluttonous instincts of its wielder. I must say, I enjoy listening to your true feelings." Aiden gritted his teeth, clearly annoyed. "I need to be careful," he muttered to himself. But then he smirked, his confidence returning. "But since I'm here to awaken Beelzebub, I'll gratefully devour all this life energy," he said with determination. Just then, Margrave Turid called out to Aiden, his voice calm and composed. "I'll return after doing some cleanup," he said. Aiden was startled. "Wait," he shouted. "I'll handle it. You can take a rest." But before Aiden could say anything more, Margrave Turid leaped into the air, soaring above the monsters. Aiden's eyes widened in shock as he watched the Margrave fly away. "No!" he shouted desperately. As Margrave Turid hovered above the horde, the monsters below gazed up at him, sensing the immense power radiating from him. The Margrave looked down at the sea of monsters, contemplating his next move. "Should I clean them all up at once?" he mused. It's such a hassle. The soldiers on the wall were awestruck by the sight. One of the men on the left said in amazement, "That's the aura blade. Only a sword master can use it." Aiden, still on the ground, was fuming. "No! At least leave me half of them," he shouted, his frustration evident. "No, even a quarter will do. Please." His voice echoed across the fortress, but Margrave Turid, high above, was already preparing to unleash his devastating power on the horde below. Margrave Turid had already begun his assault on the monsters, moving with a speed and grace that belied his massive strength. With every swing of his aura blade, a dozen monsters fell, their bodies severed and strewn across the ground. It was a massacre. Within moments, the once threatening horde lay dead, their lifeless bodies scattered around like discarded puppets. As the dust settled, Margrave Turid descended back to the ground, a broad smile on his face. "It's been a while since I've had to use my strength properly," he said, laughing heartily. "Feels great to stretch my muscles like that." Aiden stood there, wiping away the tears of frustration from his eyes. He couldn't believe it. His chance to harness the life energy of those monsters for Beelzebub was gone, taken away in an instant by Margrave's overwhelming power. Why did he have to come here and ruin everything? Aiden thought bitterly. Dasvalt, the chief officer of the Attila fortress, approached them, bowing gratefully. "Thank you both," he said, his voice filled with relief. "Thanks to Margrave Turid, we repelled the monsters without much damage. We owe you our lives." The Underlord's voice cut through his thoughts. "Aiden," the Underlord called, but Aiden shot back. "Are you here to mock me again?" The Underlord chuckled. "What are you talking about? What I mentioned earlier wasn't about this monster wave." Aiden blinked, suddenly on high alert. "What do you mean?" "Be more specific," he demanded. The Underlord repeated, "The massive thing I sensed wasn't the monster wave." Aiden's eyes widened in shock. "If it's not the monster wave, then what is it?" Aiden's heart skipped a beat as he looked up and saw a massive flame blazing high above them in the sky. The flames illuminated a colossal shadow moving just beyond the fortress walls. Aiden's eyes widened with realization. "Everyone, get out of here quickly," he shouted, his voice cutting through the chaos. The scene erupts into chaos as the fireball explodes, sending a fiery shockwave throughout the fortress of Attila. Soldiers scrambled to dodge the blast, barely managing to escape its deadly reach. Amidst the confusion, one of the men on the left stammers, "What in the world is happening?" Aiden and Margrave exchange a look of disbelief, both stunned by the scale of the fire spell. This has to be a powerful mage," Margrave mutters, his eyes scanning the horizon for any sign of the caster. Aiden, however, grits his teeth, his face twisted in a grimace. "No, it's not a mage," he growls. The Underlord's voice cuts through the chaos. "You know what creature that was, don't you?" he inquires, his tone more curious than concerned. "A fire spell from the Pyrenean Mountains?" "It's that creature from my past life," he mutters. Memories flood back to him, recalling how he had barely crawled back from heaven after facing it. How could he have forgotten such a monster? The Underlord raises an eyebrow, puzzled. "Heaven? Are you serious?" he asks skeptically. Aiden waves him off, saying, "Just forget it. I'm talking nonsense." As the soldiers regroup, one of them catches sight of the approaching horde. His eyes widen in terror. "Why are they all together? Orcs and trolls, forming ranks?" he exclaims, pointing towards the massive creatures. Dasvalt nearby hears the remark and furrows his brow in confusion. The trolls of the wasteland and the orcs of the Pyrenean Mountains, weren't they always at each other's throats? How could they join forces now? Margrave turns to Aiden with a determined look. "I'll handle this." "Be right back," he announces, preparing to leap into action. But Aiden grabs his arm, stopping him. "It's too much for you to handle alone, Margrave." Margrave looks back at him, a mix of shock and indignation on his face. "What do you mean?" Aiden points towards the back of the horde. "Look," he urges. Both Margrave and Dasvalt squint into the distance, where a massive figure stands, weapon in hand, commanding the creatures. Margrave's face pales. What is that?" he asks, almost in disbelief. "A high troll," Aiden replies, his voice low and tense. A monster with magic power and strength that rivals a swordmaster's. Margrave takes a deep breath, steeling himself. Aiden, Dasvault, evacuate the people. I'll hold them off and buy us some time. But Aiden steps forward. There's still a way to fight this, he insists. Margrave turns to him, eyes narrowing in confusion. How do you plan to handle a creature that even I find challenging, he demands. Aiden turns to Lo, who has been listening intently. Lo, Aiden commands, lead the soldiers. Hold those creatures off as best as you can. Without hesitation, Lo nods and takes off. Margrave glanced at Aiden, a mix of skepticism and concern in his eyes. What are you plotting? He asked. You know a high troll is an equal match for a swordmaster. You can't handle that alone, right? Aiden nodded, his face serious. I know. The moment the high troll created a troll army, the difficulty of subjugating him tripled. Even if you, Margrave, face him alone, you won't last long. But there's one way for all of us to survive. We're short on time, so I'll explain briefly. As Aiden spoke, the orcs and trolls were closing in, ready to launch their attack. Dasvault's eyes darted between the advancing horde and Aiden, disbelief evident on his face. This is ridiculous, Dasvault exclaimed. If Margrave leaves now, this place will be in ruins within 30 minutes. Suddenly, another explosion rocked the fortress, the shockwave blasting debris into the air. Margrave's expression turned to anger. Do you realize how absurd your plan sounds? He shouted over the chaos. I do, but this is our only way out. We don't have time for anything else. He stepped closer, his voice dropping to a near whisper. Please, Margrave. Trust me. Just this once. Margrave was silent for a moment, his mind flashing back to a time when Aiden, younger and less experienced, had boldly claimed that he could at least scratch Margrave in a spar for the sake of their territory. A faint smile tugged at the corners of Margrave's mouth. As expected, I can't help but admire your resolve, he said softly. He then looked Aiden in the eye, his tone firm. All right, I'll trust you this time, but know this. If you're wrong, you'll have to join my Knight Order. Aiden sighed, half smiling at the bet-loving Margrave. Agreed, he said. With a nod, Margrave took a step back, then propelled himself into the air, flying towards the enemy horde. The Underlord, observing the scene, couldn't help but voice his doubts. Aiden, are you sure there's only one high troll in this world? How can you be certain it's the same one from your past life? Aiden didn't answer directly. Instead, he asked, do you know how much orcs and trolls hate each other? He then answered his own question. The only one who could be subjugating orcs and commanding them is that creature, and it's using extremely vicious methods to do so. As they spoke, the troll clenched its massive fist and swung it towards the soldiers. The ground shook with the impact, but the soldiers managed to dodge just in time. Suddenly, Lo rushed forward, his sword gleaming in the light. With a swift, precise strike, he severed the troll's head from its body. Aiden watched Lo, a smile tugging at his lips. In his mind, he thought, Lo's grown strong enough to slay trolls. Those herbs I gave him must be working wonders. The Underlord observed the scene and remarked, looks like that peculiar method worked. Aiden nodded. Yes, but these trolls can't be killed with just that. There's a reason why trolls led by a high troll are called the Immortal Army. As if to prove his point, the high troll extended its hand toward the fallen troll. The severed head, now engulfed in flames, began to float and then reattached itself to its owner's body. Two soldiers nearby stood in stunned silence, watching as the revived troll roared in fury. The high troll can continuously revive its minions, Aiden explained. Normally, it would take a swordmaster's aura blade or an archmage spell to annihilate them for good. But I have another method. A strange look crossed Aiden's face, and his voice softened. My little baby, he whispered to his sword. You must be very hungry since you missed your meal earlier, right? I'll give you plenty of trolls to eat. The Underlord's voice echoed in Aiden's mind. Beelzebub, you must be having a hard time. Meanwhile, Lo was facing the advancing orcs. His thoughts were frantic. After eating the young master's poison, no, the medicinal herbs, I thought I'd become strong enough. How can it end like this? I haven't even repaid the young master yet. The troll loomed over Lo, ready to deliver a crushing blow. Terrified, Lo closed his eyes, preparing for the end. Young master, I'm sorry, he muttered. But before the troll could strike, Aiden appeared above it, moving with blinding speed. Good job, Lo, Aiden called out, plunging his sword into the troll's head. The troll screamed in agony. Lo, startled, warned, Aiden, be careful. Even if you behead that thing, it won't die. Aiden only smiled, lifting his sword high. Beelzebub, it's meal time, he declared. I might not have the power of a sword master or an archmage, but I have the gluttony authority of Beelzebub. The sword began to glow with a dark energy, its gluttony absorbing the troll's very existence. Once absorbed, the troll's body disintegrated into nothingness. The high troll, watching from a distance, was both furious and horrified. Aiden's laughter filled the battlefield. Trolls are indeed delicious, he mused. Just one of them has a life force equivalent to dozens of wolves. His eyes shifted to the orcs, who had gone mad with rage at the sight of their fallen comrade. I wonder, Aiden said, more to himself than anyone else. Are orcs tasty too? He looked down at his sword. What do you say, Beelzebub? Want to have a taste of them as well? Aiden remarked that even after consuming 4 of them, it wasn't enough. He laughed, commenting on how full of energy these trolls were, and wondered aloud if they were in season, since no matter how much he consumed, his hunger only seemed to grow. The trolls were shocked and puzzled by his words. Suddenly, the troll master raised his weapon, which was now engulfed in flames, and attacked Aiden. Fortunately, Aiden managed to dodge the attack, noting that the troll master looked really angry. The Underlord taunted Aiden, saying, instead of running around like a coward, why don't you face him properly? Aiden replied, in my previous life, I would have done that, but right now, running away is my only option. If I even get grazed by that fire magic, I'll be roasted. I just need to hold out until Margrave arrives. Just then, the troll raised his sword again. The Underlord warned Aiden to look up, and Aiden was startled to see another attack coming his way. He managed to dodge again, frustrated and cursing, these damn orcs are so annoying. The Underlord questioned why Aiden hadn't absorbed the orcs earlier, pointing out that while they might not be as powerful as trolls, they still had considerable life force. Aiden smirked, explaining that he had a use for them. If Margrave arrives on time, not killing the orcs will be more beneficial. Until then, I have to find a way to survive. Suddenly, the high troll began casting fire magic again. The troll master was still conjuring flames, growing angrier as he saw Aiden flying high above and far away. Aiden was exasperated, realizing that the troll was now trying to burn everything, friend or foe alike. Without the ring of swiftness, Aiden knew he would have been char-grilled by now. As he prepared to dodge the fire magic, the Underlord questioned him. If you dodge in midair, how do you plan to avoid the next attack? Aiden was taken aback, realizing the Underlord was right. He shouted, I can't die in a place like this. Determined, he headed into attack. Meanwhile, Margrave was being chased by orcs, but suddenly, an aura blade flashed. Margrave appeared and called out to Aiden. You held on well? Relieved, Aiden responded. You really put out the fire just in time. Aiden praised Margrave, saying, as expected, a sword master can cover that distance so quickly that after seeing Orc's chief, Aiden thought it seems everything went smoothly. The high troll was shocked and confused by the sight of this unexpected intruder. The surrounding orcs were equally startled. However, Aiden just smiled and said, the tide has turned, you disgusting troll. Despite his bravado, Aiden was momentarily stunned when the Underlord told him he was falling. Aiden shouted in confusion, but suddenly an orc caught him, helping him land safely on the ground. Thank you, Aiden said to the orc, who was still reeling from the events that had just unfolded. The soldiers nearby were equally surprised. One of them, standing to the left, couldn't believe his eyes. Did the orc just save the young master? He wondered aloud. The orc then spoke, saying, I'm sorry I couldn't protect you, my kin. He extended his hand, clenched his fist, and vowed, we will take revenge on the trolls who humiliated us. At this point, the orcs moved to confront the trolls, catching the trolls completely off guard. The soldiers were baffled. One of them, standing to the right, asked, "What's going on? Why are the orcs attacking the trolls? Aren't they on the same side?" His companion beside him was equally confused, questioning, "What on earth is happening?" The Underlord then addressed Aiden, saying, "It has happened just as you predicted." Aiden nodded, replying, "I told you." The High Troll was controlling the orcs by exploiting their loyalty to their tribe and chief, using their leaders and children as hostages. Still puzzled, Aiden asked, "Were those hostages released?" Aiden smirked, saying, "The enemy of my enemy is my friend. That's why I didn't absorb the orcs recklessly." At this moment, the High Troll gripped his weapon tightly, laughing as if he had a plan. But his confidence shattered when he saw Margrave attacking him. The High Troll was taken aback, and Margrave, too, was momentarily confused, contemplating using fire magic to defend himself. Margrave thought to himself, "The troll is truly an entity on par with a sword master," just as Aiden said. "If it were only me, I wouldn't have been able to win." At that moment, the orc chief also joined the fight, attacking the High Troll. However, their combined efforts still weren't enough. Margrave thought to himself, "If only there were another sword master, this situation could change." The High Troll, shocked by the turn of events, heard Margrave's voice. "That's enough of your screeching," Margrave said coldly. "Just die quietly." Despite this, the troll snarled, "I can't die so meaninglessly. I will never forgive the humans who killed my parents." Suddenly, flames erupted from his eyes and nose, catching Margrave and the orc chief off guard. Margrave felt a strange disturbance in the mana flow and realized something was wrong. The troll had gone mad, declaring, "I'll explode all the mana in my body and take you all down with me." Margrave's face grew serious. "Even if I can't stop this, the knights won't be able to withstand the flames," he thought. He shouted urgently, "Everyone run! He's going to explode!" But before anyone could react, Aiden charged toward the High Troll. Everyone was stunned. Margrave called out, "Aiden, come back! You might die." But Aiden just smiled, his eyes full of determination. He prepared to stab the troll, saying, "The final blow is mine." In an instant, the explosion occurred. Aiden stabbed the High Troll with his Beelzebub sword and said, "It's time for the main dish." As he drove Beelzebub into the troll's heart, the sword began to absorb all the mana from the troll. The High Troll, now almost unconscious, could only gasp as Aiden continued to stab him. Lo! Seeing this, shouted in alarm, clearly worried for Aiden. Meanwhile, Margrave looked on, confused and concerned. How does Aiden plan to handle such a massive mana explosion? He wondered. He couldn't tell if Aiden had a plan. Suddenly, Aiden's confidence wavered. He was startled by the sheer amount of life force and mana he was dealing with. "It's much more than I expected," he muttered, realizing the sword might not be able to absorb it all. The troll's screams filled the air, and Aiden, shivering from the effort, urged, "Just a bit more." He plunged the sword deeper into the troll and called out, "Underlord, I need your help now." The Underlord appeared suddenly, looking at Aiden with a smirk. "You would use me for something like this?" he asked. Aiden, desperate, said he'd do anything. The Underlord replied, "If you promise not to drink any holy potions for a week, I'll help you." Annoyed but out of options, Aiden agreed, telling him to hurry. "The sword has absorbed enough life force," Aiden said. "Now, to awaken it, we need to infuse it with demonic energy. It's time to awaken the corrupted lord sleeping within." The Underlord placed his hand on the top of the Beelzebub's sword and chanted, "Awaken, Lord of Gluttony, Beelzebub." Suddenly, the ancient lord inside the sword awoke, his voice echoing with a sinister power. "It has been a while," he said, his presence overwhelming. "I am the will of the Lord of Gluttony, who seeks to devour even the sky. Who dares to awaken me?" Aiden felt the weight of Beelzebub's presence. As expected from an ancient ruler of the underworld, it was overpowering. He knew that if he were an ordinary human, he would be mentally dominated and turned into a puppet. But Aiden had something the Beelzebub feared the most. The Underlord smiled, addressing the awakened Beelzebub. It has indeed been a while. Aren't you curious about who woke you up? Beelzebub turned his gaze to the Underlord, his voice a low growl. Why are you here? He demanded. The Underlord glared at Beelzebub and snapped. Enough with the chit-chat. Just hand over your authority. Beelzebub, still processing his surroundings, looked surprised. To see you here? I can't believe it, he murmured. The Underlord pressed him. Are you giving it up or not? Beelzebub sighed and said he would comply. Aiden smirked, thinking to himself, the Underlord really did take down all the corrupted lords and became the ruler of the underworld. No wonder Beelzebub fears him. Aiden then spoke aloud. You could be useful too, you cursed creature. The Underlord shot Aiden an angry look and warned, just keep your promise. Suddenly, Aiden entered his berserk mode, his eyes burning with intensity. He nodded at the Underlord and said, of course. Gritting his teeth, he commanded, devour it, Beelzebub. Beelzebub let out a scream, and the High Troll was visibly shocked. Aiden attacked, absorbing the troll's power, leaving the troll helpless. As Aiden continued to absorb power, he warned everyone, I can't see anything. Be careful. Lo held tightly to a pole, shouting over the roar of the wind. It's a huge gust. Watch out. Aiden shouted at the troll. Become my strength. But the troll, in a last act of defiance, refused, saying no. Suddenly, the wind stopped and the troll disappeared. Margrave, witnessing this, was shocked. Where did the High Troll go? He wondered aloud. Lo asked, is it over? Are we safe now? Aiden stood there, stunned, realizing the immense power he had just absorbed. Is this the true power of the Lord of Gluttony's authority? He wondered. The sheer amount of life force and mana was overwhelming. Feeling a wave of nausea, Aiden muttered, I overdid it. I ate too much. The Underlord chuckled. That's what happens when you try to consume everything. No matter how strong the power, if you overuse it, it turns into poison. You'll have to let some of it go. But Aiden, defiant, shouted, absolutely not. I'll absorb it all, no matter what. Just then he noticed something below him, a flicker of movement. He was puzzled, asking, what is that? The Underlord looked down and said calmly, it's a phoenix. Aiden's eyes widened in realization. No wonder the High Troll was using fire magic. Aiden quickly checked the source of the movement and saw the phoenix. Curious, he wondered if it had been consumed by the High Troll and had fallen into a comatose state. He mused to himself, a phoenix. This species is as rare as a dragon. How did it end up here? He then laughed and turned to the Underlord, asking, if I eat it, can I use fire magic too? The Underlord raised an eyebrow. Didn't you just say you were about to vomit from eating too much? Aiden shrugged, grinning. That's true, but being able to use fire magic is a different story. The Underlord sighed. Watching you, I realize how reckless human greed can be. Aiden just smiled and said, thanks for the meal. Suddenly, Margrave tapped Aiden on the back. In the end, you pulled it off, he said. Aiden felt a wave of nausea and couldn't hold it back any longer. He vomited. Margrave stepped back, concerned. Are you okay? He asked. The Underlord, smirking, remarked, that serves you right for being too greedy. Margrave noticed the phoenix and, shocked, asked Aiden, that's a phoenix. How did such a rare creature end up here? Aiden, still focused on his own condition, was worried about his mana and life force. I need to eat the phoenix too, he muttered. As he spoke, the phoenix egg cracked open. Aiden stared in disbelief, cursing under his breath. Suddenly, a phoenix emerged right in front of him. The Underlord commented, the phoenix woke up after taking in the mana you expelled. Around them, the other soldiers were stunned. One man exclaimed, that's the legendary phoenix. Another added, seeing a phoenix in person. What a stroke of luck. Aiden, annoyed, grumbled, it's all because of that old man Margrave. I missed a once-in-a-lifetime chance. Just then, something landed on his head. Hey, what's going on? Aiden shouted. A voice nearby said, the phoenix is sitting on the young master's head. Aiden was shocked and confused. Why is it sitting on my head? Suddenly, flames surrounded him. Margrave and Lo gasped in alarm. Aiden panicked, thinking, does it know I try to eat it? Is it going to burn me alive? But to his surprise, the flames weren't hot at all. It's not hot. What's happening? He asked. The Underlord replied, it's the Phoenix's blessing. It grants considerable resistance to most flames. Since it was resurrected by absorbing the mana you expelled, it probably sees you as its savior. Aiden smirked, holding the Phoenix feather. This will come in handy against that guy, he said to himself. Suddenly, the Phoenix flew away, leaving Aiden staring at the feather as it drifted into his hand. Margrave, still in shock, asked, Aiden, are you all right? You were just on fire. Aiden smiled and replied, yes, I'm perfectly fine. Margrave shook his head in disbelief. Since I met you, I've experienced one unbelievable thing after another. Aiden laughed. Trust me, I'm just as bewildered as you are. This is my first time experiencing anything like this. As they spoke, an orc approached them. Aiden turned his attention to the orc and asked, are you the orc tribe's chieftain? Why are you still here? Do you want to keep fighting? The orc looked at Aiden solemnly and said, an oath broken will be paid with a price. The price is death. You may take my head. Aiden was confused and asked the orc, what oath are you talking about? The orc explained, long ago, the head of the Regressed family and our chieftain fought a duel over this land. Our chieftain lost and swore to return to the mountains, never to come down again. We settled there, protecting the land ever since. Aiden suddenly remembered Dasvalt mentioning that the orcs had settled in the middle of the mountain range. Could it be that the orcs were the reason monsters never came down to the territory? He thought. It made sense now. The orcs were a race that valued their oaths more than their own lives. That was why they stayed up in the mountains. The orc lowered his head and continued, my head should be enough. I beg you, please forgive my clan. Aiden turned away, saying, I don't particularly need your head. Go back. The orc, however, was insistent. The ancestors' oath must be honored. I must pay the price for breaking it, he shouted, raising his sword. Aiden, annoyed, said, you're so noisy. Should I just cut you down? But since you've been protecting this territory, I'll be patient. After a moment, he smiled and said, how about you pay for it with something other than your head? The orc was stunned by his words. The next day, Margrave watched in bewilderment. I'm not sure what I'm looking at right now, he said. Aiden, smirking, replied, is that a compliment? Thank you. Nearby, a soldier was panting, carrying a heavy load of sand, and muttered, why is this so heavy? He watched the orcs carrying similar loads with ease, tossing them as if they were pebbles. Aiden and Margrave observed the scene. Orcs and humans working together, Margrave remarked. Aiden nodded. Normally, this would take months, but with the orcs' help, we can finish in a week. The orcs get to protect their chieftain's life, and we get free labor. Isn't it a win-win situation? Margrave sighed, looking at Aiden. As expected, I can never figure you out. Talking to you is like talking to a dragon that's lived for hundreds of years. Margrave thought to himself that they should leave this matter to the Slaughter Tower. With monsters from the wasteland now appearing, the situation was beyond their control. Aiden nodded and smiled. In his mind, he thought, I've already gotten what I wanted, so it's not my problem anymore. He had come to awaken Beelzebub and had even received the Phoenix's blessing. Now he was wondering if he should just quietly go back and train some more. As Aiden rode his horse, the people cheered for him, thanking him for saving their territory. Long live our troll master, they shouted. One man said, I heard the high troll was defeated by the young master's sword. Another added, I heard our young master can even control phoenixes. A third chimed in, not just phoenixes, they say he can control orcs with just one finger. Aiden, now with a flower crown on his head, was annoyed. Where did all this distortion come from? He thought. He absolutely hated these kinds of superficial welcoming ceremonies. The Underlord teased him, saying, the flower crown suits you well. But they're not being superficial. They genuinely see you as a hero. Aiden shrugged. What's the big deal about that? It's not like being a hero makes money. The Underlord chuckled. There you go, talking about money again. You really are more suited to be a mercenary than a knight. Aiden sighed. A hero? I was really just planning to train quietly this time. Meanwhile, at Cassie's research lab, Aiden asked, "Is there no way to fix it?" Cassie shook her head apologetically. "I'm sorry, Aiden. There's no way to fix it at the moment. Her body's Manhwa vein syndrome is more serious than I thought. We'll need much more delicate medicine than what we use for the cute night." Aiden frowned. "How much would that medicine cost?" "I can pay any amount." Cassie looked at him seriously. "Money isn't the issue. We need an alchemist skilled enough to create the highest grade elixir." Aiden sighed. "An alchemist like that would probably only be found in the Imperial Court." Cassie smiled and said, "Still, I'm grateful to you, Aiden. If I had stayed there, I would have died, spending my life just searching for a cure." Aiden stood up. "Is it possible for us to just get the alchemist?" he asked. Cassie looked puzzled. "Haven't you heard? Such an alchemist is incredibly rare." Aiden turned back to her with a knowing look. "I know someone. Don't worry. Just wait here. I'll bring them back soon." As Aiden left, Cassie reflected. At first, there was doubt. When Aiden had suddenly come to her and offered a way to cure Manhwa vein syndrome, even providing research funds. Then came acceptance. Knowing her body wouldn't last long, she had no choice but to accept his offer. Next was despair, realizing that the method to cure her body was impossibly difficult. The people she had met so far had warm words but cold actions. But Aiden, his words were cold, yet his actions were warm. It had been a long time since she felt such genuine kindness. Cassie sighed, watching Aiden leave. "Interesting," she murmured. "I'll be asking you to bring me a skilled alchemist then. My research will be perfect after all." Aiden simply nodded and left. As Aiden walked down the hall, the Underlord's voice echoed in his mind. "You're moving for someone else's sake. They say a sudden change in a person can be fatal, so you need to be careful." Aiden replied calmly, "I'm just keeping a promise. You know how important promises are to mercenaries. Besides, I was planning to visit that alchemist soon anyway. That person doesn't have much time left." 3 days later, Aiden arrived in Markellan City. The Empire's largest free trade city was bustling with life. "It's such a lively city," Aiden thought. The Underlord, confused, asked, "Is this what you meant by a city?" Aiden smirked. "A hot city where everyone is working hard." The city itself disappeared once due to a crazy dragon's attack. "I guess I'm the only one who feels strange about it being here." The Underlord pressed on. "Where is this skilled alchemist you mentioned?" Aiden's expression turned serious. "I'll find my way there. Just be quiet for now." Meanwhile, in the slum area on the outskirts of Markellan City, 3 men were bullying a 4th man. The leader of the trio clenched his fist and snarled, "Why didn't you have the goods ready by today?" The man in front of him, trembling with fear, stammered, "No matter how fast I work, I can only make one a week at best. If you suddenly ask me to make twice as many of those top-grade elixirs." Suddenly, the leader punched the wall beside him, making the man flinch. "That's not my problem, Joseph," he growled. "Be careful. If you don't bring it by tomorrow, your collateral might get hurt, you know that." Joseph's face went pale with fear. Just then a voice rang out. "Fraud, extortion, threats. For those suffering from these, we offer solutions." Aiden shouted repeatedly, catching the attention of the men. The leader, surprised and annoyed, looked around, trying to locate the source of the voice. He turned to his companion. "Karen, go take care of him." Karen stepped forward and approached Aiden. "Who are you, and what are you doing hanging around here?" he demanded, sizing up Aiden. Aiden smirked. "You don't know who I am?" he replied coolly, ignoring Karen. He waved a hand toward Joseph. "Hey, are you suffering from fraud, extortion, or threats?" Karen's face twisted with anger. Gritting his teeth, he stepped forward to punch Aiden. "How dare you ignore me?" he roared. But before Karen's punch could land, Aiden struck first, sending Karen flying into the wall. The 3 men were stunned, watching Karen slump to the ground. Aiden clenched his fist and smirked. "Move aside," he said, his eyes cold. "I can't see the customer." Suddenly, the leader of the group grew furious and lunged at Aiden. "You dare mess with my people? I'll kill you," he roared. Aiden sidestepped the attack with ease, a smirk playing on his lips. Grabbing hold of the man's pants, Aiden yanked them down, revealing a pair of cute boxers. The man's face turned crimson with embarrassment as Aiden laughed. "What's with these cute panties?" Aiden teased. The man, enraged, shouted, "You troll-looking bastard." Aiden's smile faded, his eyes narrowing. "What did you just say?" he growled. The man raised his sword, glaring at Aiden. "You think you can mess with us? We're Cerberus, the top predators of Markellan City. You're dead." He swung his sword, but to his shock, the blade shattered against Aiden's defense. Aiden grabbed the man by the collar, lifting him effortlessly. The man, now visibly terrified, stammered, "Who are you?" Flames suddenly engulfed Aiden's sword. The thug's eyes widened in disbelief. "Ow! How are you using sword aura?" Aiden's expression darkened. "Your eyes must be broken if you think I look like a troll. You're lucky I'm ending this so easily." The Underlord's voice echoed in Aiden's mind, amused. "You're the first person I've seen use Beelzebub like this." Ignoring the Underlord's comment, Aiden turned his attention to Joseph, who was still trembling. "So, how about it? Need some help?" Aiden asked, his voice calm but authoritative. "I offer my services at a reasonable price." Joseph stared at him in shock and confusion. An aura-awakened swordsman offering to help at a low price? It seemed too good to be true. "You're not going to ask for something crazy later, are you?" Joseph asked, unsure if he could trust Aiden. But with no other options, he reluctantly agreed. "Okay, help me." Joseph was a renowned Chinese alchemist in the underworld of Markellan City, and his daughter had been kidnapped by the Cerberus Guild, a notorious criminal organization. Joseph's mind drifted back to a painful memory. He could still see his daughter, Eldest, being dragged away by members of the Cerberus Guild. Her terrified cries echoed in his ears. "Dad! Dad!" Joseph, filled with rage and fear, had screamed her name, trying to reach her. But he was powerless against the guild. The Cerberus Guild boss had smirked at him, his voice dripping with mockery. "You used to be a Chinese alchemist in quite an interesting place, right?" The boss's eyes gleamed with greed as he continued. "Here's the deal. You give us an elixir pill once a week, and we'll protect you and your daughter. It's a good deal considering how dangerous this place is." Joseph had felt tears welling up as he gritted his teeth, the bitter taste of helplessness filling his mouth. In the present, Aiden's voice broke through Joseph's memories. "In my previous life, Joseph made those pills for years," Aiden said, his tone cold. "But when he found out his daughter was already dead, he came to me for revenge. Shortly after, he joined her in death. But that was in a different life. This time, it's not too late." Desperation filled Joseph's eyes as he looked at Aiden. "I'll give you anything you want," he pleaded. "Please save my daughter." Aiden smirked, confidence radiating from him. "Of course, Mr. Joseph. But remember, you must keep your word to give me anything I want." As Aiden spoke, the Underlord's voice echoed in his mind. "Beelzebub says you're the first person he's seen with a stronger power of gluttony than him." Aiden's smirk widened. "Well, that's a fair deal," he thought. While Aiden and Joseph spoke, one of the Cerberus men tried to sneak away. Aiden noticed him and called out, "Hey, where do you think you're going?" The man froze, startled. Aiden approached him, his eyes narrowing. "Did you think I spared you for no reason? I've got some questions, but I doubt you'll answer them willingly. So we'll start with a few hits." The man quickly stammered, No, I'll answer right away." But Aiden punched him anyway, making sure the man knew he wasn't joking. Meanwhile, at the Cerberus Guild headquarters, the guild leader, a man named Ankle, was laughing in his office. "With 2 of Joseph's pills this time, we should make a nice profit," Ankle mused aloud. "Maybe I should just take one myself. They're so good for the body." Suddenly, the door burst open, and Ankle looked up, startled. "Who dares enter my room without knocking?" he demanded. But his anger turned to curiosity as he saw the intruder. "Did you bring Joseph's pills?" Ankle asked, expecting a positive answer. The Cerberus Guild member stood speechless, his eyes wide with fear. Ankle, the guild leader, noticed his expression and asked, "What's with that face?" Before the man could answer, Aiden appeared in the doorway, his presence commanding. "Found you," Aiden said with a smirk. Ankle was confused and immediately defensive. "Who the hell are you?" "Did you do this to my man's face?" he demanded, gesturing to the bruised and battered guild member. Ankle sneered. "You must be stupid to walk into a tiger's den like this. I don't know what you're after, but you're not walking out of here alive." He held up a small artifact, a smug look on his face. "This is an emergency alarm artifact. The moment I inject mana into it, my men will be here in seconds," he boasted. He activated the artifact, but nothing happened. Ankle's smugness quickly turned to confusion. He pressed the alarm again, looking around the room, bewildered. "Why isn't anyone coming? Is this damn thing broken?" Aiden slowly advanced toward him, a dangerous smile on his face. "Looking for your guild members?" he asked casually. "I made sure they were all in a deep sleep when I came in. But don't worry, I won't let you sleep so easily." Aiden's eyes darkened. "Now, where is Joseph's daughter?" Ankle tried to regain his composure and laughed nervously. "So, you're just a mercenary hired by Joseph, huh? Don't get cocky, because you took out a few of my grunts. I'm the strongest in this guild." He clenched his fists and prepared to attack Aiden. But before he could make a move, Aiden punched him hard, sending him sprawling. After beating Ankle, they made their way to prison, where Joseph's daughter was held captive. After reaching the prison cells, Ankle told Aiden, "We are here." Aiden was shocked to see and told Ankle, "You locked her in a place like this. You guys are really shitty people." Then Ankle said, "But that child, she is not an ordinary one." After Ankle opened the door, he told Aiden, "She may seem calm now, but usually—" Then Joseph's daughter suddenly hit Ankle in his face, and he flied backward due to her kick. And then she told him, "I will kill you." The girl's eyes blazed with fury. "I'm going to kill you," she screamed. Aiden raised an eyebrow, impressed. Not bad, even though he's half dead already, he thought. Before he could say anything else, the girl lunged at him, attacking with a surprising speed and strength. Aiden barely managed to dodge her blows. The Underlord's voice echoed in Aiden's mind. "She's using an interesting power," he noted. Aiden ducked another punch and asked, "What do you mean by that?" The Underlord responded, "It's the power of a really annoying guy." Aiden brushed off the Underlord's comment. "Whatever," he muttered. "None of that is my business. My goal is to save her and bring her back to Joseph." The young girl was still screaming in fear and rage, her eyes wild. "Take me to my dad. I want to go to my dad," she cried. Aiden stepped closer, his voice calm but firm. "We're going to see your dad," he said. His words seemed to reach her, and she stopped struggling. "Your dad asked me to save you," Aiden continued, his tone gentler now. "Let's go home." The girl's eyes filled with hope and disbelief. She reached out and grabbed Aiden's hand, looking up at him with wide, tear-filled eyes. "Really? I can go to my dad?" she asked, her voice trembling. Aiden smiled, nodding. "Of course. Let's go." Suddenly, the child threw herself into Aiden's arms, hugging him tightly. Aiden stiffened, startled by the sudden embrace. She sobbed into his chest, her small body shaking. "I was so scared," she whispered. "I miss my dad so much." Aiden patted her back awkwardly, his voice softening. "It must have been terrifying to be here alone," he said. "But you're okay now. Let's go see your dad." As they made their way out of the dark prison, the Underlord watched them, a thoughtful expression on his face. "I didn't think you'd still have the capacity for empathy in that head of yours," he remarked. Aiden glanced at him, a hint of irritation in his eyes. "What do you take me for? What do you think of me?" The Underlord shrugged. "It just feels a bit different from who you were in your past life," he said. At this point, the girl, Eldest, was very excited. She quickly opened the door and called out for her father. Her father, Joseph, was shocked to see her and called her name Eldest. Eldest immediately hugged her father tightly, tears streaming down her face. Joseph was crying too and kept apologizing to her. Meanwhile, Aiden stood nearby, just watching them with a smile on his face. After a while, Eldest fell asleep, and Aiden and Joseph started talking. Joseph thanked Aiden sincerely, showing him deep respect. However, Aiden told him that things were not over yet. With a crazy smile, he said, "Now comes the most important part. It's time to settle up, customer." Joseph smiled and agreed, saying, "Of course I should compensate you. How much do you want?" Aiden smirked and asked Joseph, "How much do you think your daughter's life is worth?" Joseph was taken aback and replied, "Well, my daughter is more precious to me than my own life. If it's money, I would spend my whole life paying you back." But Aiden shook his head, saying he already had plenty of money. Joseph was confused as Aiden continued. "Is there anything else? For example, your alchemy skills?" Joseph hesitated, then asked if Aiden meant his alchemy. Aiden nodded and said, "Yes, what I need right now is an alchemist with skills as meticulous as yours." Joseph realized that Aiden had known about his alchemy skills all along and that now it was time to pay the price for the help he received. Suddenly, Joseph showed Aiden a blue elixir. Aiden recognized it immediately and thought to himself, "That's it. That's what I saw in my previous life." Joseph explained that this was the highest grade elixir he had ever made and offered it to Aiden as part of his repayment, saying he could try it. Aiden was thrilled and eagerly asked if he could drink it. Joseph smiled and confirmed, "Yes, of course. It's part of your repayment." As Aiden lifted the elixir to his lips, the Underlord inside him commented, "Wipe your drool. It's disgusting." Aiden ignored him, drinking the elixir in one gulp. As soon as he drank it, Aiden was suddenly surrounded by flames, which left the Underlord puzzled. Aiden felt a surge of power and thought to himself, "As expected, it's top grade. Just drinking one elixir has doubled my mana capacity." Aiden told Joseph that the elixir was excellent beyond comparison. Joseph laughed and said that, as repayment, he would continue making these elixirs for him. But Aiden smirked and proposed something different. He asked Joseph if he would consider joining their duke's household. If Joseph agreed, they would protect him and his daughter. Joseph was shocked upon hearing this. He asked Aiden, "Who exactly are you?" Aiden apologized for the late introduction and then introduced himself, saying, "I am Aiden Regressed, the eldest son of the Regressed family." Joseph was surprised and asked, "Aren't you the troll prince everyone's been talking about lately?" Aiden felt annoyed at being called the troll prince again and thought to himself, "What the heck?" The Underlord inside him commented that it seemed Aiden had gained quite a notorious reputation. Ignoring the remark, Joseph asked Aiden what a young master of the Duke's household was doing in such a humble place. Aiden explained that there was an urgent matter he needed Joseph's help with. He assured Joseph that if he could help resolve the issue, the Duke's household would protect Joseph's family for life. Aiden then asked, "Isn't that a good offer?" Joseph agreed that it was, but he was still confused. He asked Aiden what the urgent matter was and suggested they start by addressing that. A short time later, at Cassie's research lab, Joseph and Aiden met with Cassie. Joseph took Cassie's hand and examined her, stating, "This is the most severe case of mana vein syndrome I've ever seen. If it weren't for the exceptional strength of the beastskin race, they would have been long dead by now." He added that it might be possible to cure it by making the medicine using the method Aiden had shown him. However, the problem lay in obtaining the necessary ingredients. Aiden assured him that their household could procure the ingredients. But Joseph shook his head and explained, "These aren't just any ingredients. They're nearly impossible to obtain." Checking the notes in front of him, he read, "Mana vein syndrome is a disease where the mana channels freeze up. According to this treatment method, we need extreme fire attribute mana to treat the frozen mana channels." Aiden asked how they could obtain extreme fire attribute mana. Joseph remained silent, so Cassie answered, "You could get it from things like a fire dragon's heart or a phoenix's feather." However, she quickly added, "But how can we find such legendary creatures?" Cassie guessed that it couldn't be helped, but she still appreciated Aiden's willingness to help. Aiden reached into his secret pocket and asked Cassie, "Do you mean something like this?" He then pulled out a phoenix feather, revealing that he had one. Cassie and Joseph were both stunned, staring at the feather in disbelief. They were confused as to why Aiden would have such a rare item. Joseph asked, "How on earth did you get something we've only heard about in legends?" Aiden shrugged and simply said, "The phoenix dropped it." He handed the feather to Joseph, who examined it closely. Joseph nodded and said, "This is enough. With this, it's definitely possible to create the medicine. Give me 2 days." Cassie was still watching them, startled. Tears began to fall from her eyes as she realized the situation might be salvaged. Just then, there was a knock on the door, and Philip entered, asking if young Master Aiden was there. Aiden turned to him and asked, "What's the matter?" Philip informed him that Duke Fried was looking for him. Aiden thought to himself, "That's right, I disappeared without saying anything this time." At Duke Fried's office, the Duke greeted Aiden and mentioned that he had heard Aiden went to Myclon City. Aiden confirmed this, explaining that he had some business to attend to there. He immediately apologized, saying he should have informed his father before leaving. But Duke Fried waved off his apology, saying, "I didn't call you here to scold you." Aiden was surprised and asked, "Then what is the reason for calling me?" Duke Fried smiled and said, "We've received an invitation to the Imperial Banquet to celebrate the Crown Prince's upcoming birthday. I want you to attend this time." Aiden was shocked. Hasn't Carl usually attended such events on behalf of the family? He asked, thinking about how much he still had to do. His father nodded, smiling. Yes, but Carl declined, saying he needed to attend to the knights. Besides, many people want to see you. Aiden was stunned. "But I'm also busy," he protested. He then asked his father, "Is this the 450th Imperial year?" Aiden's father nodded and said, "Yes, that's right. You must attend this banquet, no matter how much you dislike it." Surprisingly, Aiden smiled and agreed. "All right, I'll go," he said, which left Duke Fried shocked. Aiden continued, still smiling. "I suppose I have no choice since Carl is busy. I'll just think of it as making an appearance." Duke Fried told him, "You've made a good decision. Be careful on your trip." After talking to his father, Aiden was walking down the hall when the Underlord spoke up, saying, "You wouldn't agree to go to such a place without a reason. What's your real motive for suddenly attending the Imperial Banquet?" Aiden replied, "A major event will happen at this year's banquet. The Black Mages will launch an attack, and at the center of it all will be the Queen of the Black Mages, the Silver Witch. I must bring that woman to our side." The Underlord was puzzled and asked, "Don't you despise Black Mages? Why are you trying to ally with someone you hate?" Aiden explained, "Unlike the radical, heretical Black Mage group, Chaos, she leads the moderate faction, Fire of Florence. Although I ended her life in my previous one, things might turn out differently this time." He then recalled a memory from his past life, where he was killing the Silver Witch. In that moment, she had told him, "If we had met under different circumstances, we might have become quite close." Aiden thought to himself, "It's a pity I couldn't reform the corrupted black magic back then or re-establish the true will of Florence." As they rode in the carriage, Aiden asked Lo, "Do we really need such a large entourage just to go to the Imperial Palace for a birthday banquet?" Lo replied, "The size of the escort represents the family's power. It's unavoidable for the sake of the Duke's reputation." However, Lo was curious and asked, "Why are we taking this detour? Is there a specific reason you insisted on stopping by this village instead of taking the shortcut?" Aiden replied casually, "I just wanted to take a more leisurely route." But in his mind, he had another reason. He wanted to get more of Joseph's top-grade elixir. However, there was a problem. He recalled Joseph mentioning, "Even if I wanted to make top-grade elixir now, I can't. We need ants tears, which come from tree spirits, as an ingredient. But as you know, they're endangered, and it's hard to even find traces of ants, let alone their tears." Aiden thought to himself, "I've never seen an ant either, so I don't know much about them. But there's someone who definitely would." Aiden smirked and thought, "Might as well pick up a gift while I'm at it." He then told Lo, "You all go ahead. There's somewhere I need to stop by briefly." Lo offered to escort him, but Aiden declined, saying, "You're weaker than me, so I'll go alone." Lo nodded and said he understood. Aiden got down from the carriage and started walking alone. The Underlord's voice echoed in his mind, asking, "Are you sure there's someone to meet in these mountains?" Aiden replied, "I never said it was a person. It's here. Even now, I can't fully grasp my master's thoughts." Soon, Aiden found himself standing in front of a heart-shaped stone. The Underlord commented, "That heart-shaped stone looks very artificial." Aiden nodded. "It is. It's a gift personally prepared for a disciple who will come someday, or so my master said. He had quite unique tastes." The Underlord asked skeptically, "Are you saying that weird stone is the gift? It feels like nothing more than an ordinary rock to me." Aiden shrugged. My master had a habit of overpackaging things. Aiden smirked and said, Master, I'll be taking it this time as well. With that, he slashed the heart-shaped stone. The Underlord questioned him. Didn't you just say this was your master's gift? Aiden replied, This is just the wrapping paper. As the stone broke, a hidden passage was revealed, leading into a cave. The Underlord remarked, This looks like a dungeon. Is this supposed to be a gift? Aiden just smirked and said, My master was always an eccentric person. He often spouted nonsense like, As the mercenary king's disciple, you must learn through pain, or you only get stronger by overcoming near-death experiences. Besides, this dungeon isn't just any dungeon. When Aiden entered the cave, monsters appeared, ready to attack. The Underlord asked, By any chance, did you and your master not get along in your past life? Aiden chuckled and said, I told you, he was an eccentric. In my past life, when I entered here without knowing any better, I really thought my master was trying to kill me. But now, I couldn't be more grateful. As the monsters charged, Aiden noticed a figure standing behind them, exuding an evil aura. The Underlord recognized it immediately, saying, It's a lich, a foolish being created when a black mage turns themselves into an undead. Aiden nodded and said, Liches are one of the trickiest opponents if you don't know how to deal with them. I remember the trouble they gave me in my past life. The lich sneered and spoke. Foolish human, you've stepped into this place without fear. I'll turn you into an undead like these others. Aiden ignored the lich's threats and charged straight at him. The lich was taken aback, clearly shocked. Aiden smirked, thinking, if I take down the lich, the rest of the undead he summoned will disappear. Besides, after taking down so many high-level liches in my past life, this half-baked lich is nothing. Aiden summoned his sword Aura and slashed through the lich. The lich's eyes widened in shock as Aiden's blade cut through him. Gritting his teeth, the lich muttered, To think I'd go without seeing the rebirth of the Black Mage Kingdom. As the dead creatures slowly disappeared, Aiden noticed something left behind by the lich. His eyes widened in shock as he picked up the item, examining it closely. The Underlord asked, Is that the pin your master mentioned as a gift? Aiden shook his head. No, I've never seen this before. But this pattern, it feels strangely familiar. We'll keep it for now. The Underlord then suggested, You should collect the lich's bone dust too. Aiden frowned, looking both confused and annoyed. Collect bone dust? Why? The Underlord explained. Didn't you say you were going to look for ints? Lich bone dust is something ints go crazy for. Aiden sighed. I hate to admit it, but I don't know much about ints either. If you're telling me to collect this for some strange reason, you'd better not be messing with me. Cursed one. Trust me for now, the Underlord replied. Aiden started collecting the bone dust, albeit reluctantly. The Underlord then asked, Where exactly is this gift supposed to be? Just wait a bit, Aiden replied. The Underlord couldn't help but tease. A moment ago, you were skeptical, and now you're collecting bone dust like it's valuable. Aiden smirked. Well, it's good to keep useful things, isn't it? As they continued exploring, they came across a room. The Underlord commented, Looks like there's a hidden room in the dungeon. Yeah, Aiden agreed. It's actually a hidden dungeon. As eccentric as my master was, he wasn't so crazy as to leave us in a dungeon with just a lich. The Underlord retorted, Throwing in a lich is already crazy enough. While walking through the room, Aiden spotted something and asked the Underlord, Did you see that in our past life too? The Underlord's voice took on a nostalgic tone. How could I forget? If it weren't for that, I would never have lost in our fight. Aiden nodded. It's been a while since I've seen this, the Banshee Spirit Shield. An item imbued with the spirit of a madness-tainted banshee. Aiden thought back to his past life, remembering how the madness from the Banshee Spirit Shield used to affect him, making it difficult to wield. But now he was confident he could handle it. One of the reasons he liked this shield was that it could be worn as a bracelet, unlike most equipment, making it easy to carry around and take out when needed. It was convenient and nostalgic, reminding him of his days as the Dragon Slayer King. He even found himself missing the madness-filled scream of the Banshee. The Underlord commented, You actually missed that? Like master, like disciple. You're both not normal. Aiden waved him off. Quiet. It's time to get out of here. He turned and called out. Should I call you out? I know you've been watching everything. I'd like to make a deal. Will you show yourself? Suddenly, a figure appeared, smirking. I've been waiting for you to call. Sucker, dear customer. Looks like you need to make a deal. The figure smiled and introduced himself. Nice to meet you. I'm Rabbits, a spirit merchant from the Friendly Spirit Emporium. If there's anything you need, just name it. Potions, weapons, food, you name it. There's nothing our Spirit Emporium doesn't have. Aiden nodded, recognizing the type. Spirit merchants are spirits of trade with strong monetary desires. The Spirit Emporium was created when these merchants gathered, with the head merchant as their leader. Aiden knew that typically, when someone cleared a dungeon, the Emporium sent a spirit to trade for the byproducts found there. Rabbits laughed and pointed at Aiden's arm. You're going to trade that Banshee Spirit Shield, right? What luck! I can buy it from you at a good price. Aiden shook his head. No, I'm not selling this. Rabbit's smile faded, replaced by confusion and disappointment. What kind of deal do you want, then? I want information, Aiden replied. I need to know the location of end dwellings on this western continent. Rabbits perked up, considering the request. You want to buy information on end dwellings? Interesting. That's not your usual request. But the Spirit Emporium deals in all kinds of goods, including information. Let's see what we can work out. Rabbits considered the request and said, the information about end dwellings is quite expensive. Even at a discount, the location of a small village would cost you 2,000 gold. Aiden shook his head. No, the price is 4,000 gold. Rabbit's eyes widened in surprise. For 1,000 gold? Are you serious? The Underlord, watching the exchange, couldn't help but interject. Are you crazy? Why are you doubling the price? Do you owe this spirit something from your past life? Aiden grinned. I do owe him, but this is just part of what my master taught me. The Underlord was puzzled. And what exactly did he teach you? Aiden smirked. The art of milking spirit merchants. My master was very skilled at it, and I learned from the best. I milked him like this in my past life, and I'll do it again. He turned back to Rabbits. Here's the deal. You give me the location of the end dwellings and 4,000 gold. Rabbits looked annoyed, his ears twitching in frustration. Wait a minute. Are you saying you're not using 4,000 gold to buy the information, but you're asking for 4,000 gold and the information? Have you lost your mind after fighting all those monsters? Aiden just smirked. No, I'm proposing a trade. I'll sell you what's behind me. He gestured to the area behind him, his smile never wavering. What do you think? Rabbit's eyes widened in shock as he realized what Aiden was referring to. How did a human like you? He trailed off, clearly flustered. Aiden kept smiling. If you don't want it, just say so. I can always destroy it. In his previous life, Aiden had been shocked when his master first proposed selling dungeon cores to spirit merchants. Are you saying you're going to sell this to them? He had asked incredulously. His master had nodded, grinning. Exactly. It's my secret money-making scheme. The real reason spirit merchants come to dungeons is for these dungeon cores. Aiden had been baffled. But this thing is so useless no one would take it even for free. Why would they want it? His master shrugged. I don't know why, but they do. When you conquer a dungeon, everything inside it belongs to you, including the core. So you can sell it. And if they don't buy it, just destroy it. Back in the present, Aiden was smirking. So, will you buy it, or should I just smash it? Make up your mind. I don't have all day. Rabbits, the spirit merchant, looked shocked and speechless. He couldn't believe this human knew about dungeon cores. Everyone else left them behind because they didn't know their value. If he told his seniors he bought a dungeon core, he might get insulted, but if he didn't retrieve it, the hat merchants would fire him. Seeing Rabbit's hesitation, Aiden started to draw his sword. All right then, I'll just smash it. Rabbits panicked. Wait a minute. He sighed, defeated. Fine, I'll buy it. Aiden laughed. You should have said so earlier. He received a pouch of platinum coins. These are definitely worth 4,000 gold. It was a good deal. As Aiden turned to leave, he glanced back at Rabbits. I'm sure we'll meet again soon. Rabbits muttered under his breath. I hope we never meet again. Then, louder, he added, "You think you can get away with swindling a spirit merchant? Just try to find the Ents village. No human has ever returned from there." Aiden laughed, clutching the platinum coins. The scene shifts to Lo, who had been waiting anxiously for his young master. "It's been half a day since he left," Lo muttered to himself, torn between waiting and going to look for him. Suddenly, he was startled to see Aiden approaching. "Young master, I was worried because you were gone so long," he exclaimed, relieved. Aiden frowned slightly. "Stop it, Lo. That's creepy." Inwardly, he remembered how Lo had treated him in his past life. Sometimes he wished Lo would go back to his old ways. This new demeanor was unsettling, and Aiden couldn't get used to it. Shaking off the thought, Aiden barked, "Anyway, have you rested enough? We're leaving for the Imperial capital right away." Meanwhile, that night, at the entrance of the Banshee's spirit dungeon, the Silver Witch arrived. "I finally found it," she murmured, but her expression quickly turned to confusion. The area was deserted. Panic flashed across her face when she realized something was missing. "It's gone," she whispered, her voice tinged with disbelief. "It should have been right here." The next day, Aiden and his entourage arrived at the Imperial capital. The carriage came to a halt, and Aiden stepped down, greeted by the Imperial Palace butler. "Welcome to the Imperial capital, young master," the butler said, bowing deeply. "I'll escort you to your guest room in the Imperial Palace." But as he spoke, the butler couldn't hide his disdainful thoughts. "We were expecting young Master Carl, but instead, this delinquent shows up? If he's notorious even here in the Imperial capital, he must be no ordinary troublemaker." The butler gritted his teeth, thinking, "We must absolutely not offend him." Aiden, noticing the butler's tense demeanor, was puzzled but didn't dwell on it. Once in his room, Aiden lay back on the luxurious bed, chuckling. Even the beds in the Imperial Palace guest rooms are different, he mused. But then his expression turned serious. "Tonight, the Black Mages will wreak havoc. Last time, many were hurt and killed," he thought, the weight of the impending events settling over him. The Underlord, sensing the tension, asked Aiden, "Why don't you go and give him a heads up?" Aiden smirked, dismissing the idea. "This is such a good opportunity. I can't let it go to waste so easily." The Underlord pressed, "So you're saying you don't care if people die or get hurt?" Aiden shot him a cold glance. "Do you think I'm you? Let me remind you, I was a hero who saved the world in my past life." Then, with a calculating tone, he added, "Just wait. I have a plan." Meanwhile, the party at the Imperial Palace was in full swing. Nobles and dignitaries mingled, exchanging pleasantries, when suddenly, Aiden made his entrance. A wave of shock rippled through the crowd. Murmurs of confusion spread as some recognized him. "Isn't that the delinquent prince?" someone whispered. "I heard he caught a troll once, but he probably stole someone else's achievement," another sneered. Aiden could hear the whispers, but they didn't faze him. "It's been a while since I've been treated like this," he mused. "People are the same, be they mercenaries or nobles. No matter, I have no business with them. There are 3 people I need to see." As Aiden scanned the room, a man's boisterous voice caught his attention. "The taste of alcohol in the Imperial Palace is truly the best. If only we could import this kind of alcohol to our Magic Tower country," the man declared. Aiden's eyes narrowed as he recognized the voice. "Magician Gustav Dora, it's an honor to meet you," Aiden said, stepping forward. The man, startled, turned to face him. "Do I know you?" he asked, surprised. This was Gustav Dora, the chief magician of Anguis, the city-state of magicians. Aiden greeted him with a slight bow. "Of course I know you. You're one of the top magicians from Anguis." Gustav frowned, clearly wary. "If you're trying to get on the good side of the Magic Tower country, you've come to the wrong person. I'm not on good terms with the higher-ups there." Aiden smirked, unfazed. "I'm not here for that. I've read your book, The Possibilities of Magical Engineering, and I found it quite interesting." Gustav's eyes widened in surprise. "You've read it?" he asked, clearly taken aback. Aiden smiled warmly at Gustav, maintaining a facade of genuine interest. "I couldn't help but be intrigued by the presentation of a new direction I'd never seen before." Gustav, clearly pleased, placed a hand on Aiden's shoulder. To recognize the greatness of magical engineering, unlike those old fogies in the Magic Tower country, you have excellent insight, young Master Aiden. Aiden laughed, playing along. I've never seen such a useful and superior field of study. But in his mind, he thought, that's what I'd say if I hadn't fallen asleep every time I tried to read it. I never even turned the first page. Gustav continued talking enthusiastically about magical engineering, while Aiden nodded along, laughing at the right moments. Meanwhile, the Underlord, growing increasingly irritated, whispered to Aiden, "Please, shut that guy up." Aiden, unfazed, replied internally, "Just pretend you don't have ears." The Underlord pressed, "Why do we need someone obsessed with magical engineering, which isn't even real magic?" Aiden's eyes glinted with foresight. Magical engineering might be dismissed and considered useless right now, but later, it becomes an indispensable technology for everyone. The Underlord, intrigued, asked, "This Gustav must be quite a famous person, then?" Aiden nodded. "He is. Gustav is famous, but not for his magical engineering. He's known as the Mad Magic Tower terrorist Gustav Dora." The Underlord's interest piqued. "A terrorist, not a famous magical engineer?" Aiden continued, his voice low, so only the Underlord could hear. "Soon, Gustav will likely cause an accident during an experiment, have his mana sealed, and be expelled from the Magic Tower country. After that, he'll attack the Magic Tower with the magical engineering weapons he developed alone. He almost annihilated the Magic Tower country. Of course, he was stopped because they had the great magician Shora." Aiden smiled slightly, a hint of admiration in his tone. "Anyway, thanks to that record of almost annihilating the Magic Tower country, magical engineering gained recognition. Isn't that strange?" As if on cue, Gustav burst into laughter. "This is the first time I've had such an in-depth conversation about magical engineering. I wonder if I got too excited and talked too much on my own." Aiden maintained his calm demeanor, even as the man shouted his name. "Not at all. It was a great conversation that broadened my horizons as well," he said to Gustav with a smile. "I'd like to have an even deeper conversation next time we meet." Just then, a loud voice interrupted the moment. "Aiden Remes!" Startled, Aiden turned to see a man glaring at him, his expression filled with rage. Who is this guy? Aiden thought, trying to place the familiar face but coming up blank. The man stepped forward, his fury evident. "You thief! How dare you steal our Cetus family heirloom? I won't forgive you." Aiden blinked, genuinely puzzled. "Who are you?" As the tension in the room escalated, Gustav, who had been observing the exchange, turned to Aiden and asked, "Is there some history between you and young Master Tyan?" Aiden, still trying to piece things together, shook his head. "No, this is the first time I've seen him," he replied, though his mind raced. "Tyan Cetus. That explains why he looked familiar," Aiden thought. Smiling, Aiden addressed Tyan. "It's a pleasure to meet you, Tyan. Now I realize why you seem familiar. You resemble your father." But Tyan wasn't having it. "Shut up, you fraud," he snapped. "How dare you scam my father and steal our family heirloom?" Aiden was genuinely confused. He remembered making a deal with Tyan's father, but there was no scam involved, at least not in his eyes. The murmurs among the other nobles grew louder as they questioned Aiden's honor and whispered about how he didn't actually defeat the troll on his own. Aiden, still maintaining his composure, said, "There seems to be a misunderstanding. I won this with a fair bet." Tyan's eyes narrowed in suspicion. "A fair bet? And I'm supposed to believe someone like you could withstand my father's sword and win?" Aiden laughed, though his patience was wearing thin. "You're going too far," he said, his tone measured. The Underlord, amused, chimed in Aiden's mind. "Surprising that you even know what patience means." Aiden retorted internally, "Are you saying I should just hit him here and now?" Tyan, frustrated, sighed and demanded, "If you're so confident, then why don't you prove it's not a scam? I challenge you to a duel. If you win, I'll kneel and apologize. But if you lose, you return the heirloom and kneel to apologize." Aiden couldn't help but notice how Tyan was becoming increasingly disrespectful. In his mind, Tyan was just as stubborn and pig-headed as his father. Aiden laughed, shaking his head. A duel at the Crown Prince's birthday banquet? How appropriate. Just then, the atmosphere in the room shifted as a new voice entered the fray. How amusing, a duel at my birthday feast. Aiden and Tyan both turned, their expressions turning to shock as they saw the Crown Prince himself standing there, a curious smile on his face. The room fell silent, all eyes now on the prince. As the Crown Prince Mars Immortalia entered, an announcer's voice echoed through the grand hall. The entrance of the Empire's little son, the esteemed Crown Prince's Highness, Mars Immortalia. All the guests, including Aiden and Tyan, bowed their heads in respect as the Crown Prince passed by. Tyan, bowing deeply, greeted the Crown Prince, thinking to himself how unfortunate the timing was. Despite this, the Crown Prince smiled, his demeanor calm yet commanding. I heard an interesting conversation, the Crown Prince said, his eyes twinkling with curiosity. Tyan immediately apologized. We accept any punishment for causing this disturbance, Your Highness. Aiden, internally relieved, thought to himself, thank the Crown Prince for saving you, you fool. He also apologized, bowing slightly. However, the Crown Prince waved off their apologies. No need to apologize. Raise your heads, he commanded, and they both complied. With a playful smile, the Crown Prince then said, I would like to see your duel. Would you spar here for me? Both Aiden and Tyan were taken aback, their expressions reflecting their surprise. The Crown Prince continued, young Master Tyan is known for his exceptional martial skills, and young Master Aiden has been making waves with his recent exploits. If you were to showcase your skills for me, it would be the best birthday present I could have asked for. Aiden was momentarily speechless. In his mind, he recalled the Crown Prince's reputation from his previous life. This guy was famous back then too, Aiden thought. He was considered the best candidate to become emperor, but he had one flaw. He's a battle maniac. Aiden realized that refusing the Crown Prince's suggestion wasn't an option, leaving him conflicted about what to do. Suddenly, Tyan smirked, breaking the silence. Gladly, as you command, Your Highness, Tyan replied confidently. Inwardly, Tyan was fuming with jealousy and determination. My father never acknowledged me, but he acknowledged that brat? I don't know what trick Aiden used on my father, but I'll expose him, reclaim our heirloom, and earn the recognition I deserve, Tyan vowed silently. He then laughed, taunting Aiden. Where's your confidence from a moment ago? Now you're trembling like a coward. You've disgraced your family with your actions. Serves you right. Aiden clenched his fist tightly, trying to keep his composure. The Underlord, sensing Aiden's turmoil, asked, Are you sure you're okay? Aiden responded with a calm, controlled voice. Your Highness, I don't particularly enjoy fighting, but since you've commanded it, how could I possibly refuse? His words were respectful, but his eyes held a steely resolve. In his mind, Aiden felt a twinge of sympathy for Margrave Cetus, but he knew he had no choice but to accept the duel. I'll use this chance to teach him some manners, Aiden thought determinedly. The Underlord, sensing Aiden's internal conflict, quipped, You really don't seem all right, fighting a kid like this. Are you even human? As the duel began, both Aiden and Tyan stood ready, swords in hand. The Crown Prince, overseeing the event, announced, For safety, the use of sword aura and artifacts is prohibited. I'm looking forward to seeing what kind of duel you both will show. Tyan, trying to maintain his composure, assured the Crown Prince, I promise an honorable duel, Your Highness. But inwardly, he was determined to prove that all the rumors about Aiden were nonsense. Aiden, however, laughed lightly, taunting Tyan, Have we started yet? This provocation made Tyan grit his teeth in anger. Your trap was the problem, Tyan snapped, before launching a swift attack on Aiden. In his mind, Tyan dismissed Aiden as an amateur, someone who couldn't possibly have defeated his father. He mentally apologized to the Crown Prince, expecting this duel to end quickly and without incident. But Tyan's expectations were shattered when Aiden's sword unexpectedly struck his forehead, causing him to stagger. The Crown Prince, surprised, exclaimed, Oh ho! A murmur spread through the crowd, with one observer noting, Tyan lost so easily. Aiden, feigning surprise, chuckled, I slipped and it just so happened that I was right there. I guess I got lucky." He added with a grin, "It's hard to judge someone's skills from a coincidence created by mistakes on both sides. Let's call this round invalid." The Crown Prince, still smiling, agreed. "Very well, let's call it invalid. Both of you should focus a bit more next time." Tyan, trying to hide his frustration, agreed with the Crown Prince, but inside, he was seething. "I let my guard down, even against a ruffian like him. But in the end, a knight is a knight, and he must know how to wield a sword." Confused and angry, Tyan thought, "What was that? And what's with that disgusting look on his face?" Determined not to be humiliated again, Tyan declared, "This time, I'll go all out." Aiden, now visibly annoyed, replied nonchalantly, "Sure, you can come at me, or go away, whatever." Tyan, enraged by Aiden's dismissive attitude, vowed, "He might have fooled me once, but never twice." Tyan gripped his sword tightly, and with a fierce determination, swung it at Aiden. But Aiden deftly dodged the attack, momentarily stunned by the speed and strength behind Tyan's strike. As expected of the Margrave's son, Aiden thought, his sword is honest and upright, just like his father. Blocking Tyan's next attack, Aiden couldn't help but comment, "Compared to the Margrave, your sword feels too light." Tyan's anger flared. "What did you say?" "My sword is light," he demanded. Aiden nodded, his tone calm yet provoking. The Margrave's sword was heavy and precise. "But your sword right now, young Master Tyan, looks like it's merely imitating his." The remark enraged Tyan even more. "Imitating?" he echoed in disbelief. Seeing the effect his words had, Aiden continued, "You were so curious about the sword that fought the Margrave, weren't you? Well, I'll show it to you." With that, Aiden swiftly moved to attack. Tyan was momentarily shocked by Aiden's speed, but he quickly regained his composure. "It's not like I can't block this," Tyan thought, confident in his ability. "To think my father was defeated by such a sword. That's ridiculous." But as Aiden's sword approached, it bent in an unexpected manner, slipping past Tyan's defense and striking him on the forehead once again. Tyan staggered, disbelief written all over his face. "Impossible. I blocked it, but how?" The Underlord, observing the duel, remarked, "I thought you'd go easy because of your ties with the Margrave. But you're taking this more seriously than I expected." Aiden smirked. "A stubborn knight like him won't stop unless he's knocked out. If I don't make him faint, I bet he'll keep coming at me until he's dead." As Aiden's strike landed, Tyan felt himself beginning to collapse backward. "I'm falling." To such unheard-of swordsmanship, impossible. But with sheer willpower, he gripped the ground tightly with his feet and forced himself to move forward. "I am Tyan Cetus, the eldest son destined to lead the Cetus family." Tyan roared, rallying himself for one final attack. He attempted to use the mercenary king's swordsmanship, a technique known for its brutal efficiency. But Aiden, with practiced ease, avoided the attack and delivered a swift blow to Tyan's back. The force of the hit caused Tyan to drop his sword and faint, his body falling toward the ground. Just before Tyan hit the ground, a man appeared, catching him effortlessly. The man's voice was calm, but carried a hint of disapproval. "It seems my friend has been causing trouble in my absence." Aiden, feeling the lingering tension in his muscles, thought to himself, "It's fine, I was feeling a bit stiff anyway." His eyes settled on the man who had caught Tyan. "So, this man is acquainted with young Master Tyan. Well, at least I don't have to work as hard to find him now. He's one of the 3 people I came here to see." The man standing before Aiden offered a polite smile and spoke with a calm, measured tone. "It's a pleasure to meet you," he said. Aiden quickly recognized him. This was no ordinary noble. The man was none other than Dair Sias, the younger brother of the infamous betrayer knight, King Silbita Sias. Dair continued, "I am Dair Sias of the Sias Archduchy." Aiden stood on the palace balcony, sipping his wine as the cool evening breeze brushed against his face. His gaze wandered over the sprawling city below, but his mind was elsewhere, contemplating the recent duel and the powerful family that Tyan and Dair belonged to. The Sias Archduchy, Aiden mused. The sword that guards the northern continent, the strongest knight family. It said that no one who inherits their blood fails to become a sword master. He sighed, a hint of envy flickering in his thoughts. If I had been reborn into that bloodline, I would already be a sword master by now. His thoughts turned to Deir. That person is called a genius, born once in 100 years in such a family. Aiden couldn't help but acknowledge Deir's skill and reputation, even if it irked him. The scene shifted to Deir, who was now with his friends, laughing and mocking Tyan. Tyan, clearly frustrated, kept insisting, I lost because I let my guard down. Aiden, having re-entered the palace, overheard their conversation. Suddenly, the Underlord appeared beside him, his presence almost palpable. I've heard the name Sias a few times, but Deir is a name I'm hearing for the first time, the Underlord remarked, his tone thoughtful. He then glanced at Aiden. If you need to meet him, isn't this the best time to approach him already? Aiden shook his head. No, a better time will come. Until then, I have to wait patiently. As he spoke, Aiden suddenly felt an intense gaze from behind, startling him for a moment. Before he could react, a group of people surrounded him, eagerly introducing themselves. Aiden was confused by the sudden attention and grew annoyed when someone referred to him as the Troll Master. Annoyed, he excused himself and returned to the terrace, hoping to avoid further encounters. The Underlord's voice echoed in his mind. Don't you find those nobles disgusting? They were looking down on you just a moment ago. Aiden smirked. What's there to hate? Humans are all the same after all. That's how they are. They cling to you when they need you and discard you when you've outlived your usefulness. He paused, then added with a touch of irony, Don't trust me too much. I'm a human, after all. The Underlord's response was unexpected. I do trust you. Aiden rolled his eyes, annoyed. That's unexpectedly touching, he replied sarcastically. But the Underlord wasn't done. You're more like a troll, so that's why I trust you. Aiden's irritation flared. You're dead once we return. I'm reserving 100 bottles of holy potion for you. Suddenly, a beautiful girl appeared behind Aiden and said, That swordsmanship earlier, wasn't it from a mercenary king? Aiden was shocked upon hearing this. She recognized my master's swordsmanship, he thought. But more importantly, the energy she emitted felt familiar to him. A smile crept across his face as he mused to himself. As expected, she came on her own. The last person I need to meet. The girl moved closer to Aiden, and he asked, Have you seen this type of swordsmanship before? She quickly replied, No, I've never seen it, only heard about it. She then added, The mercenary king's swordsmanship can render any defense useless. If he had been a knight, he would have surely gained great honor. Aiden thought to himself, That man a knight? He would have told you to give that damn honor to the dogs if it didn't make him any money. Smirking, he responded, Yes, he probably would have. He then asked her, Isn't this banquet too boring? I hate these kinds of formal events. Aiden reflected, No matter how much you change your appearance, how could I forget your presence after fighting against you hundreds of times? He smiled and said, Isn't that right, Niceta Florence? She was momentarily shocked, but quickly composed herself. So, you already knew about me. Let me ask you a question, she said. How did you awaken that sword? Aiden happily answered, I had a little help from a friend. In his mind, he thought, I figured it out. You came because you saw Beelzebub with me. Niceta seemed somewhat irritated as a dark aura surrounded her. Trying to be evasive? Then let me ask you again, she demanded. Where is that demonic energy flowing from your body coming from? At that moment, Aiden began to sweat. As expected, what an immense murderous aura, he thought. If it's the demonic energy she's sensing, could it be the Underlord? How amusing. He considered, we'll discuss that later. Although we were at each other's throats in our past lives, let's try something different this time. He smirked and said, I'm on your side. Niceta looked puzzled. On my side? As if you know about me. She said. Aiden continued, the leader of the moderate faction of Black Mages, the Fire of Florence, the Silver Witch. The last lineage of the Kingdom of Black Mages, the Florence Kingdom. The head of the intelligence organization, White Moon. Is that enough? Or, do you want to know more about yourself from me? After hearing all of this, Niceta was puzzled and confused. She gritted her teeth and asked, "How do you know that much?" Aiden noticed that her murderous aura had diminished, but he addressed something else. "We don't have much time. Something is about to start." Niceta pressed him. "Stop evading and answer me already." But then, she suddenly noticed something, her eyes widening in shock. "Is this black magic to summon the undead? I didn't expect them to escalate things this much." Aiden responded calmly. "These guys always follow the same obvious pattern as always." He then added, "This black magic won't end until the caster is dead, right? You seem to have many questions for me, but let's handle this situation first." He began to smile and said, "You're here to capture the heretical black mage group Chaos, aren't you?" Niceta was even more shocked, sweat forming on her brow. "He even knows that I'm here to capture Chaos? Who the hell is this guy?" she thought. She quickly composed herself and said, "We'll continue our conversation later." Then, she suddenly disappeared. Aiden thought to himself, "I'll let Niceta handle that side." Just then, undead began to appear where the black magic was cast. Aiden remarked, "Let's take care of this side, shall we?" As they moved inside the banquet hall, soldiers rushed in front of them, shouting, "Don't let the undead get any further inside." Suddenly, Tyan appeared, swiftly slashing his sword at the undead. With one powerful strike, many of the undead were sent flying. He smiled and said, "Don't be afraid. They're just the weakest undead." Aiden entered the hall, and after seeing Tyan using sword aura, the Underlord inside him remarked, "Oh, even that junior Margrave has reached the stage of advanced sword aura." Aiden acknowledged, being at the advanced sword aura stage means he's definitely strong, but he just picked the wrong opponent earlier. He must always feel like he's losing because of his friend Dair. Suddenly, an undead troll appeared, leaving the soldiers stunned. One of them exclaimed, "When are the reinforcements coming?" Tyan, recognizing the danger, thought to himself, "An undead troll? That's dangerous. We'll have to wait for reinforcements." But before he could react, Dair moved swiftly beside him, striking the troll with his sword aura and killing it instantly. The Underlord inside Aiden remarked, "That guy, Dair, seems to be just a step away from becoming a sword master." Aiden replied, "You're right. He's at the stage just before the wall of sword master, a semi-master." He continued, "Tyan is strong, but having his close friend and rival be Dair, he's got terrible luck." The Underlord then asked Aiden, "Why aren't you helping them and just loafing around?" Aiden responded calmly, "They can handle this on their own. They don't need my help at all. Besides, there's something I need to confirm." The Underlord seemed confused by this response. Suddenly, some armored undead appeared. While Dair and Tyan were fighting against the undead, Tyan sensed an incredibly dense, demonic energy from somewhere and mentioned it to Dair. At that moment, an armored, masked man moved toward Dair, calling his name. Just as the armored undead was about to strike, Dair felt a moment of fear. Before the attack could land, Aiden appeared in front of him, using his Banshee shield to block the strike. In Aiden's mind, he thought, finally, the one who ruined this banquet has appeared, the strongest of the undead, the Death Knight. Plus, I thought something was off, and as expected, even though it's the strongest undead, Dair, as a semi-master, should be able to handle it. I always wondered why he lost in my past life. But this guy, he's been strengthened with dark magic to have power beyond that of a semi-master. He continued to think, I wouldn't have been able to block that attack if it weren't for the Banshee's spirit shield. Now I understand why Dair lost against him in my past life. The Death Knight kept repeating Dair's name, water dripping from his mouth. Aiden was shocked to hear the Death Knight speak Dair's name and thought to himself, I don't need any of the other distractions. In that moment, the undead knight attacked Aiden again with precise force, but Aiden managed to block it once more. As he held off the attack, a realization struck him. So that's what it was, he thought. I should have realized something was wrong from the start. I should have noticed that the undead weren't moving to attack randomly, but were instead trying to separate Dair from the other soldiers. Aiden quickly pieced it all together. Everything here was planned to kill Dair. That's all for today. Thank you so much for watching. I hope you all enjoyed it. If you'd like to see more Manhwa recaps like this, please don't forget to like, comment, and subscribe to the channel. That way, you'll stay updated with more content like this. Until next time.